Good evening and welcome to a special meeting of the Willits City Council. It's June 29th, 2026, and we're going to start with a pledge of allegiance to the flag of our country, and I think Davey Bowles is going to lead us. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Scott and Davey.
Councilmember Burton.
Present.
Gonzalez.
Present.
Stransky.
Yes.
Alaniz.
I'm here. Here.
Council welcomes participation in its meetings. Comments shall be limited to 3 minutes per person so that everyone may be given an opportunity to be heard. To expedite matters and avoid repetition, whenever a group of persons wishes to address the council on the same subject matter, the mayor may request that a spokesperson be chosen by the group. This item is limited to matters under the jurisdiction of the City Council which are not on the posted agenda. Public criticism of the City Council, commissions, boards, and agencies will not be prohibited. No action shall be taken.
So, I want to talk about the Brown Act tonight. The Brown Act, when we have a special meeting, Brown Act clearly says we don't have to, it is not necessarily legally required for anybody to be allowed to speak on any items that are not on the agenda, but it is optional and we're going to do it. So with a special meeting, here's how we're going to do it. We're going to open it up for any public comment that's not on the agenda. And then if you're in a hurry, you can talk about any agendized items, so you can go do your life. Then when we get to the budget, we're going to start it with public comment. We're going to have hopefully a very robust conversation about it. And then at the end of the at the end of the robust discussion of it, we will open it up, excuse me, to public comment again, because I think that our robust conversation is going to create more questions. And so if you have questions during this discussion, the presentation, write them down so you don't forget them. All right, any questions on that, seriously? All right, so let's start with, is there anybody who has any non-agendized public comment? Hearing none, that's closed. Is there anybody who's in a hurry that would like to comment on any agendized item and has to get out of here? Okay, none. So now, the first thing we have an action item, receive a report on the city's vacancies in a public hearing in compliance with California Government Code Section 2502.3. And I'm going to guess nobody in this room has ever had this before because this is a fairly new law. So let me explain this. California State Assembly in 2024 approved Assembly Bill 2561, and this law basically went into effect of January 1st of last year. And it required public agencies at least once each fiscal year to hold a public hearing and receive the agency's report on the status of vacancies and recruitment and retention efforts. During the hearing, identify any necessary changes to the policies, procedures, and recruitment activities that may lead to hiring obstacles. And number 3, allow the recognized employee organization for bargaining units to make a presentation at the hearing. In addition, if the number of job vacancies within a single bargaining unit meets or exceeds 20% of the total number of authorized full-time positions, the city must, upon request of the recognized employee organization, include additional specified information during the public hearing. Assembly Bill 2561 required public agencies to report annually at a public hearing on staffing vacancies and recruitment and retention efforts, and to provide employee organizations an opportunity to present. So we are having that hearing right now. So is there any public comment on this item? Hearing none, going to the presenter, which is Joseph Park.
Thank you, and some of this may be a reiteration, but the action requested, well, first, to receive a report on the city's vacancies in a public hearing in compliance with California Government Code Section 3502.3. Action requested. This item is to request that the City Council receive a report on the city's vacancies in a public hearing in compliance with California Government Code, Section 3502.3. The executive summary is the council is asked to open a public hearing to receive a report on the status of city vacancies, hear from labor organizations who elect to participate, and accept public comments prior to acting on the new fiscal year budget. This complies with the same code mentioned above. The background, California State Assembly Bill 2561 was approved on September 22nd, 2024, and added this section to California's government code. This law, effective January 1, 2025, requires public agencies at least once each fiscal year to first hold a public hearing and receive the agency's report on the status of vacancies and recruitment and retention efforts. 2, during the hearing, identify any necessary changes to policies, procedures, and recruitment activities that may lead to hiring obstacles. And 3rd, allow the recognized employee organization for bargaining units to make a presentation at the hearing. In addition, if the number of job vacancies within a single bargaining unit meets or exceeds 20% of the total number of authorized full-time positions, the city must, upon request of the recognized employee organization, include additional specified information during the public hearing. AB 2561 requires public agencies to report annually at a public hearing on staffing vacancies and recruitment and retention efforts, and to provide employee organizations an opportunity to present. So for discussion, the city has 2 vacancies as of June 19th, 2026. One in the unrepresented employee group, city manager, and one in the Willits Police Officer Association, police sergeant. There's one additional vacancy anticipated in July for the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers based on a notice to separate that we've recently received. The vacancy rate is less than 20% for each of the recognized bargaining units and for the city as a whole. The breakdown is shown in the table below. Represented positions are based on the budgeted positions approved from the March 9th, 2026 reorganization. So as you can see, in each labor unit, the IBEW has 1 vacancy coming open out of 16, which keeps it at 6.25%. The Police Officers Association is 1 vacancy out of 14, 7.14%. And the non-represented positions, 1 out of 15, 6.67%. Overall, that's 3 out of 50 at 6%. The city has made no changes to policies, procedures, and recruitment activities that may lead to obstacles in the hiring process and is actively recruiting for the positions. The labor representation units have been offered an opportunity to provide a presentation as part of this hearing. Because the city has a lower than 20% vacancy rate overall and in each of its representation units, there is no further information required to be shared.
And a slight correction to that, I do not believe the city is actively recruiting for police sergeant.
Correct.
Yeah. All right, so that's the report. That's the first official report under that assembly bill that we've ever received. Joseph, thank you very much, and thanks for making sure that we're on top of this. To the council, are there any questions? We just have to vote to receive this report. No actions needed other than receive the report. Sure. Oh, I'm sorry.
One of our bargaining unit representatives.
Well, I apologize.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. My name is Brittany Ponakar, and I come to you as the Willits POA President. We've reviewed tonight's agenda item number 3, and the WPOA recognizes the financial strain placed upon the city's budget, its added burden placed onto employees, and the council's obligation and commitment to mitigating the costs and/or loss of services to any of its residents. We reviewed the language for AB 2561 and discussed with Interim City Manager Connor prior to this hearing. We acknowledge that the WPOA's vacant position is attributed to the classification of police sergeant. We also believe that it's true that this agenda item isn't completely accurate as to the total department vacancies. Within the dispatch role, the city has an approved budget for 1 dispatch supervisor and 4 FTE dispatchers, 4 full-time dispatchers, based on the organization chart released from the March 9th employee reorganization. At this time, dispatch is staffed by 1 dispatch supervisor and 2 FTE dispatchers. There are 2 vacancies, which are being covered by both myself and 2 part-time retired annuitants. As you know, retired annuitants are limited to 960 hours, whereas a full-time employee may be budgeted at 2,080 hours within a year. Also, in the March 9th reorganization, the police department's authorized staffing was reduced by 25% through previous vacancies. Now, I recognize that AB 2561's language does focus on the authorized staffing, which is lowered, but this is still not a clear picture on the state of our police department. Our use of retired annuitants are only a temporary measure and frankly a gift from our seasoned employees raising their hand to lessen the burden placed on a 24-hour dispatch center. When they have already worked a career in public service, they're still willing to help more. The WPOA wishes to see the success of this city and we serve and request your close attention to both this matter and the future budget items that you'll discuss this evening. Thank you.
Very good presentation. Thank you, Brittany. Is there anybody else who would like to represent their employee association? Hearing none, go to the council.
You need a motion to
I need a
accept?
motion to accept the report.
I'm making that
I'll
motion.
second.
A motion by Councilman Burton and Jerry Gonzalez second. To the clerk.
Councilmember Burton,
Aye.
Gonzalez,
Yes.
Stransky,
Yes.
Alanis.
Yes.
Almond.
Aye. All right, moving on to the meat of tonight's meeting, the discussion and possible adoption of the proposed fiscal year 2026-2027 budget. This is a line item budget. If you do not have a copy, there are copies in the back that you're welcome to. Well, I'll start with public comment. Is there anybody who would like to start with public comment at the beginning? Sherry.
I just want to say, this is a wonderful budget presentation, easy to follow. Anyway,
And you come from a line of work where you've done budgets many times.
yes, no, and this is, I mean, I was always very frustrated. There were totals in this budget, which was really nice. Okay, so a couple comments. They weren't numbered, so I numbered them myself. But anyway, at the bottom of one of the pages, and I can't, mine's page 3, but I don't know what page it would be on yours. At the
I
top,
numbered mine too.
it says general fund budget. Yeah, I started right after that, I think, with page 1. General fund budget.
Okay.
At the very bottom, it says fund year 26-7 of expenditures of the general fund. The total expenditures, $6,436,000 and change, represents a decrease of $353,000 compared to 25-6. Implementing of staffing reorganization plan consistent with declaration fiscal emergency. Note, this resulted in ongoing general cost reductions of about $700,000. I guess my question was, it's regarding,
I think that what she's looking at is the fiscal year overview pages.
yeah. So when I go up to the revenue and expenditure detail, on mine it's page 19. It breaks down the revenues. It's not the most detailed breakdown, but it's more than earlier. It shows that for expenditures, it shows the city council / city clerk, 1,100, is $205,000 more than last year, and the city admin is $226,000 more than last year. And it's true altogether, when you look at all the expenditures for all the different departments, they go down by $353,000. But those two departments go up $431,000. So I was wondering if
We'll be talking about that.
you could shed some light on that.
Well, we will be shedding.
Okay, great. So that was just that's a question. Then my other one was, there's 2 vacancies from what I hear. Are they included in are the positions budgeted for in the budget? That's a question. And the last thing is, when I look at the total expenditures, salaries and benefits, I went through department by department, added up just the numbers for salaries and benefits. They're a bit over 5.2 million, total budget about 6.4 million. Salaries and benefits make up 82% of all the costs. And so I'm wondering, in this budget, when I went through it, I don't see what looks like proposed budget cuts. And
We'll be talking about that too.
okay, so my question is, are they going to be considered for this current year, even though they're not in here, or pushed down the road? And, which I don't think is a wise thing, but that's
All right,
my 2
thank
cents.
you.
I'm done.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Anybody want a chance? Seeing none, public comment is closed. All right, to the presenter. So is Andy or Joseph? Who we're going to do? Andy, okay. And that microphone is mainly just for the video, not for amplification.
Oh, okay. So you want me to yell?
No, we can hear you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. For the record, Andy Heath, financial consultant to the district. That was the other night. To the city. What I'd like to do for you tonight is actually go over your budget that's being proposed for fiscal 26-27. This budget essentially starts in a couple days, all right? There's a lot of information that I'm going to go through. I'm going to try to go through it in 40 to 45 minutes or so, but it is a lot of information. You have a lot of moving parts in your budget. Over the course of the last 3 to 6 months, a lot has transpired in this city, where you adopted a budget for the current year that only has 2 days left in it back in September. You declared a fiscal emergency 6 months later in March. A lot has been done since March in the 3 months that have followed. We've put together, working with staff who have done a very commendable job trying to put all this together for you in an organized, easy to read, transparent format with as much reconciliation as possible. And you might recall that when I presented information to your council before, I said I was about 95% sure on a lot of the numbers. Well, I'm about 97% now, okay? So a lot of the numbers that I came up with in the past ended up coming to fruition or were very close. So I'm pretty confident that what we put in front of you tonight is a bare bones budget, okay? And we're gonna be talking about that a little bit. There are no big bells and whistles built into this budget, rightfully so. Your general fund, it's still not balanced completely. You're still relying on reserves to balance your general fund budget, but that's where we're at. And please keep in mind where we were just 3 to 6 months ago. We had a $2.4 million gap in the general fund alone without looking at Measure K. And that was real, okay? It wasn't fake. It was a real number. Your costs in the general fund were simply $2.4 million higher on an ongoing basis every year than the revenues you were bringing in. So staff's goal was to come up with as many strategies as possible to try to reconcile and balance things moving forward. And we've done a commendable job, okay? And we're going to show you that tonight in a couple of the slides so that you understand exactly what has transpired. Having said that, we're not quite there yet. Okay, there's still a lot of work to be done, and staff needs the guidance and the help from the city council to do this. Okay, you provided great guidance in the past. We are where we are because of what you enabled us to do. Okay, so we are looking for your advice. We're looking for your comments. We're looking for, your opinion on how we can continue to get this city to be fiscally sustainable. But we are on the way. Okay, let's see if oh, good. All right, so as part of tonight's presentation, I'll give you an overview of the budget development process, a timeline, which I kind of just went over a little bit, coordination, how we coordinated everything, and then the strategy. We'll look at the citywide budget. So we're going to look at the citywide budget as a whole. Keep in mind, citywide means just that. It's the general fund, the enterprise funds, and all the special revenue funds combined. It's the whole city. Then we'll look at citywide staffing, capital, and cost allocation. Not much has changed there. On the staffing side, obviously, a lot has changed. But the cost allocation methodology, we'll go through that in one slide. I want to make sure you understand that. General fund and Measure K fund, and those are presented together. The Measure K fund, we're looking at that as a discretionary revenue source at this point. You simply have to. Your general fund is in a deficit position. Measure K has always had a larger fund balance in the general fund. So the Measure K fund has to be considered a discretionary fund at this point. So they'll be looked at together. Your enterprise funds, and you have 4 of those: water, wastewater, airport, and solid waste, not solid waste, closed landfill. Enterprise, those are your enterprise funds. Then we'll look at the other fund groups. Not a lot going on in these other fund groups. Okay, you have a little bit of capital that's going on in your transportation funds, and you have a little bit of capital in your CIP, your capital improvement program fund. And then we'll have discussion and questions after that. Okay, looking at the proposed budget, and this is a timeline. So a lot of this I went over already. So we did adopt our final budget that we have for the current fiscal year, which has 2 days left in September of 2025. You may recall that the council at that point had not approved a budget. We went back and looked at everything because there were some questions about the validity of information in terms of numbers, fund balances, and the such. Because we were converting from from the legacy system to a Springbrook system, and you had a lot of data and a lot of different systems. So trying to reconcile all that was very difficult. But that's where we came up with the 95% number at the end of the day. Okay, so that was done in September 2025. Then we completed the audit in February 2026. So the audit for 23-24 came back to the city council, and that was good. So that had fund balance numbers in it that were then tied back to the general ledger. Declaration of a fiscal emergency happened a month after that in March of 2026. That basically set in motion strategies to reduce the general fund expenditure load. That was the main goal. You had too much expenditures, not much you can do with revenue, not a lot of revenue augmentation out there that could have been looked at, so we had to reduce the expenditure load. And more importantly, create fiscal sustainability moving forward. And then, of course, a lot of these things were implemented very quickly, but they continue to this day. They're being implemented over time, and we still continue to try to find ways to reduce the expenditure load in the general fund. Putting this budget together helped us do that, okay? We had a focus. Don't ask for a lot of one-time stuff, and there's a little bit in there, and we'll go over what that is. But don't ask for a lot of one-time stuff, no new positions, obviously, no big cars, no capital. Let's find out what our base really looks like and how we can move forward to create a sustainable path. Overview of the preliminary general fund and Measure K fund budget was done with the Finance Committee. This was just a couple weeks ago. Okay, so I came in and did an overview with them on June 17th. And then here we are 12 days later with the proposed budget before the City Council. And between the time that we presented the information in the Finance Committee to today, there are a couple of changes. One of them has to do with the closed landfill and the general fund's responsibility, partial responsibility to fund that closed landfill, which from a budgetary perspective, it has not done in a long time, a lot of years, but it's responsible for it. I added that back, and I also added, at the request of the Community Development Director, 2 elements for your general plan that need updating, your housing element and your safety element. They are also built in into the budget as well. So those are the only two changes. So it's a finance committee. Proposed development budget process, so coordination. What did we do? We worked with staff really close, but before doing that, we did update the general ledger activity. We looked at all funds for fiscal 24-25. And right now, I will tell you that we are working with the auditor to start the fiscal 24-25 audit. It's the auditor's goal to be on site at the last week of July to do all of the preliminary field work, which has not been done at this point, and the final field work in that week. So I'll be working really hard with Joseph to get everything reconciled, get everything closed up so that when we give the auditor the trial balance, he can come here and do the work he needs to do in July, which is the goal, to get that audit underway and done. On the heels of that audit, of course, you will have your audit for 25-26, which ends in 2 days. So, but we'll need time for that, and the goal will be to try to get you a 25-26 audit January, February timeframe next year. So, and that's really aggressive. Worked with the city management to update the staffing requirements and the funding schema. So management worked really hard. As you might recall, there was a lot of arbitrariness that was built into the way staffing was allocated to the various funds, including the general fund, the water fund, and the wastewater fund throughout the city, and other funds for that matter. We went back and had some conversations about how each position provided services to those funds and what made sense to charge to those funds. So that has been completely updated, and I'm happy to say that it's palatable and it works. Work with city management to prepare the base budget requests, which weren't very many, and recommendations for all funds, operations, and capital. So there's about 1.6 million, I think, in capital. I have a slide for that. That we'll go through, but all of this capital is funded either by a grant or a special fund. So there's no capital using discretionary funding from the general fund or the Measure K fund. Updated comprehensive multi-year forecast. So this is something we want to keep putting in front of you as time goes on, and as things change fiscally, updating that forecast is critical to see where you're going to end up from a base perspective moving forward if things remained as they are at the current day. And then prepared the budget and materials for the presentation to the council tonight. Strategy. The strategy in developing this budget was to focus on delivering a base level of services given the declaration of a fiscal emergency. That's a big deal. Okay, declaring a fiscal emergency cannot be taken lightly. It means a lot has to happen, particularly with the staffing load, and potentially to the services that you provide to the community. But what we've done is we've been able to reduce staffing significantly without significantly impacting the impact or the service levels that you provide in this community. So from my knowledge, I really haven't heard anything that suggests that you're providing a lower level of service and you will continue to do so than you were 4 to 6 months ago. So that's kudos to the staff there. And then obviously mitigate and eliminate the need for deficit spending in the future. So we're on the way there. We've made significant progress with that, but we still have to do more to balance the budget. Focus on delivering a budget without any significant one-time or extraneous budget alternatives. We have done that. And then evaluate the funding schema for staffing, which we have done as well. Just in the box down there, the city has made significant progress towards implementing strategies to mitigate deficit spending, and we'll need to remain focused to continue the forward progress. So we're not there yet. We're not out of the woods. We still need to do a little bit more to make this work. But because we have a little bit more to do, that's going to take some time. It's going to take some thought. It's going to take some strategy. That in no way should impede you from adopting a budget tonight, okay? This budget for tonight is bare bones. It's moving us forward. It gives your staff appropriation authority to move forward, but we know we still have a lot of work to do. Okay, moving on to the citywide budget. So your citywide budget is $16.8 million. That's the number in the purple circle that you see there. This is the appropriation authority, essentially, that the staff is asking for for the coming year. You can see that half of that ask is in basically your discretionary funds that comprise most of your actually all of your non-enterprise services, which would be your general fund, your information technology fund, which is like a memo fund to the general fund. It'll be combined in the future, and your Measure K fund, okay? There is some double counting here because we've appropriated Measure K as a transfer out to the general fund, and then we're spending that money as part of the $6.4 million in the general fund. So keep that in mind that we have to ask for appropriation authority for both transfers out and actual expenditures, but you're not really spending $16.8 million. You're spending $16.8 million less the transfers that are between all the funds. So, and that's about $1.3 million. All of your discretionary funding is in the general fund, Measure K fund, and information technology fund. You'll see here that there is about $7.5 million that's being appropriated in your enterprise funds, and then just a bunch of capital in your transportation and capital improvement funds, and we'll go through that specifically on a separate slide. One takeaway right here, just from a citywide perspective, is assuming that this budget comes to fruition, okay, meaning we bring in the revenues we say we're going to bring in, we incur the expenditures that we say we're going to incur. In the general fund, at the end of the day, you'll have a deficit balance in the core general fund of $251,000, okay? So the general fund will no longer have any reserves, all right? It will be relying on the reserves that will exist in Measure K, which will have $3.3 million, okay? And I'll go through the mechanics of that in just a minute, but keep that in mind. This is your staffing schema. So in 25-26, there were 58 FTE. In 26-27, 44 FTE. This does not include the city council. You can see how the funding schema for these positions has changed over time. Okay, so in 25-26, for example, you had 34.62 FTE that were allocated to your general fund. Okay, that means out of all of the 58 positions that you had, 34 of those were charged directly to the general fund. Portions of people are charged to different funds, and they're all added up. Today, the budget that we're requesting allocates 24.43 positions to the general fund. So you can see that's where a lot of the drop in cost happens, because it's a reduction of basically 10.19 positions. And you can see where actually there's no funds that increased. That's because we reduced staff pretty much across the board. So every fund essentially has a decrease in the number of people that are being allocated to it in the coming year, from 58 to 44 positions. Just wanted to show you that.
We did not get that in any handout we got, right?
I didn't hear the question.
Your slide wasn't part of our handouts, right?
The FTEs, the allocation of people, wasn't anywhere. That was a difficult thing to follow in the budget because you didn't.
What this slide is saying?
This slide wasn't in anything that I had.
I just made this slide.
Oh, I know, that's right. He was saying we didn't have that, and I said, yeah, we didn't have a copy of that till now.
No, I can get you even more breakdown detail on this.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's really hard to, I find it really hard to analyze the budget when you don't know the change in FTEs within the funds that are being discussed.
So what we can do, I mean, this is by fund. So this is the aggregate of the fund. So what I can do is, the way I built this slide is I used last year's budget, which had a matrix in it. It had positions by department, how much, each, that's where I got the numbers on the 58. And then I used what we have today, which is 44, using what we have, what Deborah, Joseph, and I have put together based on the reorg and the positions in the reorg. But this is just in the aggregate. But Councilmember Burton, it's really easy to go back and create an apples to apples comparison of the big matrix that you saw by position with the new matrix. That's not a problem at all.
Sorry.
All right, go to the next slide. So this is the total cost. So you can see out of all the staffing costs, where the majority of these costs are located. So in your transportation fund, you have about $137,000 in staff costs. In your landfill dissolution fund, $42,000. Wastewater and water have 1.1 and 1.4 million respectively, and then your general fund has just under $5 million in total costs. And you see the number of FTE there. So the general fund has the preponderance of the total cost of staff in the city, as it should, but it's significantly different than what's been presented in budgets past, okay? Because there's now science behind what's going on behind these positions and where they should be charged. This is your citywide. Again, we're still focusing on the citywide budget. This is your citywide capital budget, so about $1.8 million in capital. The water fund has $650,000. That number should actually only be $550 because just found out today that the first project listed on there, the SWRP filter media replacement, was done in the current year. So that is done, so that will come off and not be, that expenditure is going to have already happened, so it won't happen next year. So your water fund capital would be $550. Transportation fund, $240,000, $120,000 each towards the East Valley Bridge replacement and the West Mendocino Phase 2 design. The RMRA SB1 fund has some striping money built into it. This is your gas tax fund as well, $139,000 and change.
You know what they're going to stripe?
Sorry?
Do you know what they're going to stripe?
No, I did.
Sorry. Yeah, it's going to be a mixture of streets that we've already designated through HSIP program. So we're going to mix this in with some additional funding we have through Caltrans, which is a 80-20 split. So we're going to try and maximize this funding. And to use that funding in as well as this, we can use this for our matching funds. So we don't have more money coming out of pocket. We can use this money for the match for that previously approved project. So it's Sherwood, Commercial Street, and some miscellaneous street striping on to Main Street, and a lot of it's crosswalk improvements and safety issues. So those are the main things we're going to focus on. In the future, we'll be getting to you guys a plan on all the capital improvement projects so we can plan out 5 years in advance so we know what's upcoming. But right now, we're using that backstop of that previous plan.
Thank you. Okay, so, and then you have a grant that's a multi-year grant, and next year, about $805,000 of that multi-year grant is slated to be appropriated. It's a California Clean Grant, and you can see that there are several projects there: Bud Snyder Park Pavilion, Bud Snyder Park Restroom, Park Pavilion, playground equipment, sidewalks and trails, Red Grove, and then the solar pedestrian lighting. So, but again, this is a multi-year grant, so this is just some of the projects that are likely to be done next year, assuming the budget is adopted. But this is a dollar-for-dollar grant, so it's all covered. Okay, and then just citywide overhead distribution. So what these departments represent, so these are the general fund departments that are core administrative departments, meaning the activities that go on in these departments support the city as a whole, all right? Doesn't matter which fund it is, but you're always going to have the city council and city clerk serving all the funds, citywide funds. City administration, similar, that same thing. Finance, human resources, legal, and building maintenance, okay, because City Hall takes care of the city as a whole. So all of those costs combined are about $1.8 million. So this is what's appropriated in the general fund for these departments. Then what we do is we look at all the personnel costs that are allocated to the different funds based on the schema that I already showed you. And we transfer a portion of these costs out to those funds consistent with that formula. It's a widely accepted formula in city government. It's the way your city has done it for a number of years, so there's really no change here. But the bottom line is, out of that $1.8 million that's directly appropriated to the general fund, there are cost allocations to other funds for 36.8% of those costs, okay? Namely for water, sewer, I think landfill gets a little bit, airport gets a little bit, and transportation gets a little bit. Okay, so that is the citywide budget. So now we're going to go into the individual fund budgets. So I'll focus on the general fund for right now. So what I've done here is I've given you where we're likely to end up in the current year, and you'll see this for all the funds that I'll be discussing, and where the proposed budget is for next year, okay? In the current year in the general fund, you can see $6.8 million in revenues are expected, and $6.78 million in expenditures are expected. So, oh my gosh, you have a surplus. $36,000 surplus is expected in the general fund. But that surplus is an anomaly, okay? Because that surplus includes a $2 million transfer from the Measure K fund. Keep in mind that one of the things that was done previously as part of the budget process was to try to get the general fund to be balanced, regardless of how much it took from Measure K to do that. So that number was about $2 million, and that's where you sit today. Measure K doesn't bring in $2 million a year. Measure K only brings in about $1.2 million a year, okay? So that means to have that $2 million transfer from the Measure K fund into the general fund, you have to burn $800,000 in Measure K reserves to make that transfer, okay? So please keep that in mind. When I show you the Measure K slide, it'll all make sense. But that's why you have essentially a balanced budget for the current year, and it's likely to be that way. There's also implementation of partial year fiscal emergency strategies. So we've had about 2 or 3 months of, reduced staffing costs. So that's helped create a small surplus there, along with the extra $800,000 from Measure K. But that number also includes $327,000 in one-time grant revenues. And these are grant revenues that were received for projects that were done in prior years that finally came in. So those monies are there and they're real. So that's where we're likely to end up. Moving forward into the proposed budget, and this is for the general fund as a whole, all right, $5.7 million in revenue, $6.4 million in expenditures. So you have an imbalance in your general fund of $651,000, all right? Now, this general fund imbalance assumes a few things. It assumes that you're transferring from Measure K the amount Measure K is going to bring in next year. Only that amount, no reserves, okay? So $1.2 million of Measure K money is actually built in to derive that $651,000 deficit. Absent having that $1.2 million come in from Measure K, your deficit would be $1.85 million in the general fund. Keep in mind that when we initially went through everything, your deficits were $2.4 to $2.5 million a year. So you can see we've reduced that $700,000 that we said we were going to reduce out of the budget, and that's a real number. So that has happened. This number assumes that all positions that are allocated to the general fund, and citywide for that matter, are filled for the entirety of the fiscal year. So to the extent you have a police sergeant that remains vacant, I think that police sergeant's worth about $157,000 to the general fund. If that position remains vacant, that amount will drop to fund balance, okay, meaning you'll have salary savings that will actually drop back into fund balance, assuming that you don't incur any additional overtime costs for minimum staffing requirements or anything like that. So things have to remain static, and that position has to stay vacant for the whole year. But it is built into the budget. The fiscal 26-27 estimated ending reserves in the fund balance, as I showed you on that first slide, the citywide slide, is again $251,000, okay? But this does assume that you're only bringing in the Measure K that is being collected in Measure K, nothing more. Looking at some of the general fund revenue, some of the key items, and I just pulled these things out for some of the things that are changing or some of the things I thought the council should be aware of for the general fund revenues as a whole. Property tax, I have growing at about 2% per year. And the secured amount, the secured property tax amount that you have in your budget now includes former, what's called redevelopment property tax trust fund money, which is your residual payments that you would typically have received as part of redevelopment before redevelopment was dissolved. And now, because it's completely dissolved, you don't need all that, okay? So all of your obligations from your former redevelopment agency are now paid off. Everything that used to accrue to the redevelopment agency is now recharacterized as property tax, okay? While you were paying off obligations, whatever was needed for obligations was paid, but whatever wasn't needed was recharacterized as what was called RIP-TIF residuals, okay? And there's a specific line item in your budget where that was accounted for. Those no longer exist. Everything is now going to be secured property tax, which is why you see your secured property tax go up so much from year to year in the budget. Okay, so that's all done. We think we got it right. It actually transpired in the current fiscal year, so we've done the math backwards, and we think that the budget that we have for the coming fiscal year represents what it should. Sales tax, based on the most recent forecast.
So did that just materialize in the last year or two?
Just this last fiscal year. It materialized with the second payment of the, actually the first payment that we received in January.
So that's just going to be a one-time bump?
It'll be a one-time ongoing bump.
Yes, but...
Ongoing, yes. So in other words, instead of being...
Be a new baseline.
Down in the RIP-TIF number, residual number, it's going to be now property tax. Your RIP-TIF number is 0 for 26, 27. Sorry?
How big a number was it?
I want to say it's about $500,000. So it just moved. And you actually got a little bit more because, again, you're not paying off obligations anymore. So if you had debt service that was, I'm going to make up a number, $500,000, okay, and your general fund for all of your TR tax rate areas throughout the city, in your general fund, out of the ad valorem, the 1% that's collected citywide, your city receives an average of about 20%. So if you don't have this $500,000 in debt service payments anymore, that's gone, dissolved, okay, you're going to get 20% of that $500,000. Okay, the schools are going to get 60, everybody else is going to get their share. But you don't get a dollar for dollar, unfortunately. You only get your share of the citywide allocation of the 1%. Okay, conservative projections for transient occupancy tax and development and recreation charges. So didn't go hog wild there. Just tried to maintain, what we were collecting, maybe a little bump. Measure K, again, does provide $1.2 million to the general fund, and this just simply represents what we believe Measure K will collect in the coming year. And then we moved all one-time activity on the revenue side. So not a lot going on with the revenue, okay? You don't have very many sources, and we think that the budget for the revenue side is pretty solid.
Andy, I'm a little hung up on this balanced budget nomenclature that you're using. It seems like it's a little bit misrepresenting.
Oh, it's not balanced.
Yes.
By any means.
That's what I mean, but
yeah.
you have several times saying that we have a balanced budget. The balance only.
Oh, no, I haven't said that. I don't think I've said you have a balanced budget. I think that I said that you need reserves to balance your budget. Okay, so you're going to need $651,000 in the general fund, and on top of that,
you really need the 1.13 million because that is a collapsing fund. You only got it's not a funding source for.
I got a slide that's going to show you that.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, so general fund expenditure, some key items there. So implementation of the staffing reorganization is built into the budget, and that resulted in roughly $700,000 in cost reductions to the general fund. Your UAL costs, which fluctuates and is volatile from year after year. I do expect it in the coming years to maybe get a little more flat. So we'll hope for that when we get the actuary reports next month or in August. But your UAL costs for next year will go up by $35,000. Insurance costs increased by $51,000, and that's everybody's getting hit with insurance costs. Information technology cost apportionment increases by $73,000. Accounting and auditing, I increased that by $25,000 only because you got 2 audits to do next year. Appropriation for your closed landfill cost, which has never been budgeted in the general fund, from what I can tell. Okay, the general fund is 50% responsible for your closed landfill. Even though you rat hole that in another fund, that fund has no funding source other than 50% from the general fund, and 50% that's supposed to come from the county. Okay? So we built that into the budget this year.
Yeah, that was originally planned to, that post-closure maintenance fund was originally planned by doing a land sale for the 200 extra acres or whatever there is around the landfill. I don't know that the city ever sold that land. That was supposed to be the funding source for the post-closure costs.
Okay. All right, so that is built into your budget. Inclusion of a one-time planning cost for your general plan, housing, and safety element updates, working with your community development director on that, so that's 80 grand that's been built in. And, you know, from a timing perspective on that, I'm not sure if those are mandated to be completed in the fiscal year or not, but I do know that at some point in time they will be.
Is that getting a contractor in here? Why is there $80,000 cost in that?
Yeah, so the seventh cycle of the housing element is due to be completed and certified by HCT in July of next year. We're behind the ball in completing that. That project probably represents, based on my experience leading this, I think this would be my third with the city. Also did one with the county. HCD is always good about adding additional technical requirements to the study, and this update probably represents something like 600 hours of staff time, or 600 hours of time to complete. There are some technical aspects to those documents that do, in my opinion, require some assistance from the consultant end of things. Upon completion and certification of the housing element update of the general plan, it kicks in the need to update our safety element. We do have an administrative draft done of that, but again, there's new state laws that require some emergency evacuation assessments that likely need to be done by a traffic engineer. And so 35,000 of that 80,000 or 83,000 is set aside for that. And that upon, above that 600-hour estimate, that requires some additional time as well. The plan originally had been to get started on this much earlier. We had ARPA, American Rescue Plan Act funds set aside to support that project. Obviously, those funds have been eaten into the, overall general fund deficit. We also had staff, specifically the senior planner, to lead that project as well. Obviously, we've lost that position as well. So, anyways, that's to get at the question. It is due this fiscal year. Having a non-compliant housing element can have some consequences that the city may not want, like being ineligible for grant funds or certain grant funds. If we hold off on it too long, it can also lead to losing our discretion over certain housing projects,
I'm not
et cetera.
questioning you that, Dusty. The question is the $80,000, is that going to a consultant?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and then the last bullet there is reduction in public safety overtime by $200,000. So it's typically about $575,000. It's built into the budget and is incurred. We've reduced that to $375,000.
How'd you do that, right?
We'll see.
Oh,
We'll see. We might have to reduce staffing. Officers may have to work alone. We'll do the best we can to provide the same level of service with less overtime.
Okay, next slide. So this is your general fund expenditure pie chart. What I want to show here is just the majority of all the costs in the general fund go towards salaries and benefits, about 76%, $4.9 million basically. And the amount budgeted for the base salaries and benefits exceeds the ongoing general fund revenues expected to be earned in 26-27, okay, not including the Measure K transfer. So if you don't bring that $1.2 million in from Measure K, That means your general fund base revenue is only $4.55 million, and you can see the salaries and benefits alone in the general fund are $4.8 million. The gap has been narrowed significantly. It was a lot wider before, okay, but it has been narrowed significantly, and that's because obviously you reduce staffing costs significantly as part of the fiscal emergency strategy. Just some notes from the general fund, some other notes. So full implementation of the fiscal emergency strategies, that's been implemented into the budget. This budget, I can't say this enough, is very basic. There's just not a lot of bells and whistles. We're calling out the bells and whistles, whether it be the general plan elements that need to be updated or the landfill costs. I mean, that's it. And there's just not a whole lot that is in this general fund that we can really cut anymore. Assumes 100% of the Measure K expected annual collections as a revenue source. Talked about recharacterizing the former RIPTIF residuals as ongoing secure property tax because all the ROPs are paid off. All positions are assumed filled. Includes comprehensive updates to the distribution of staffing costs. It's the third time we've mentioned that. Significant increase in health benefit costs. This is a kicker, okay? Health benefit costs in your general fund for the coming year are budgeted at $922,000.
What were they last year, Andy?
A lot less than that. It was about, I think it was like 25 or 30% less than that, okay? So that $922,000 alone represents almost 20%, almost 1/5 of your entire general fund expenditure base, just for providing health benefits, okay? Health benefits, and again, this is nothing new like insurance. Over the last 2 years, and especially from this year to next, health benefit costs are going up for everybody. It's crazy. And it's not just in this state, it's everywhere. I don't know how it's sustainable, frankly. But this is a real number, and that is the cost that, in accordance with the way you pay for health benefits right now, that's what it's going to cost the general fund in the coming year. It does not include the $66,000. So this is one thing that was discussed during the budget process. There's likely a need to replace your records management system, to a RIMS record management system. This needs to be done at some point in time, if not sooner than later. It's going to cost you about $330,000 or so to do this. This number, $66,000, represents 1/5 of the cost, assuming you get into a lease program that would need to be incurred to the extent that you did that project or started that project in the coming year. So again, this is not built into the budget right now, but it may come up in the future as something that needs to be done, just because it might need to be done. All right, moving on to Measure K, same thing. So you can see for the current fiscal year that ends in 2 days, $1.2 million in revenue, $2.1 million in expenditures. So $2 million of that goes to the general fund as a transfer, and the other $110,000 goes to the capital projects fund to pay for former capital projects. In the coming year, the proposed budget, it is a balanced budget. Okay, $1.2 million in revenue, $1.2 million in expenditures. The anticipated use of reserves in the current year is about $894,000 out of Measure K. And again, that is to basically backstop the general fund from having to come up with those reserves itself, which it does not have.
Mr. Heath, do we have to vote on that move, or can this just be a decision made as part of passing the budget? Do we have to vote separately to move that amount of Measure K money to fill it from the reserve? Like, or can we move it from this fund, or is there not a need because we're going to be voting for it through the budget?
That's a good question, council member. So I'll give you my strategy on that. Your general fund has no reserves, okay? Your general fund should never have no reserves, okay? Your general fund is your discretionary fund that pays for anything that comes up that cannot be paid for by other funds. If you have a lawsuit, if you have a liability claim, if you have an economic emergency, if you have something that you need to do from a capital perspective that you absolutely have to have, All of those things typically come out of general fund reserves, absent any other source of funding. And this is why, of what a lot of cities do, is they have a reserve targeted at 30, 40, 50% of their expenditure base in the general fund. Your city at this point in time doesn't have that, okay? It's relying on where you've put, in my mind, a very discretionary revenue source called Measure K into a separate fund. You've put that over there in that fund, that's been sitting there for a long time. It's got $3 million plus in it. So from my perspective, the way I'm trying to massage this budget and start to tell the story is that Measure K is general fund money, okay? It should have always been considered general fund money, especially when the city started escalating costs, adding positions, providing increased benefits, et cetera, whatever. So that didn't happen. Measure K stayed over here, and the general fund, as a result, suffered. Okay, when you see the forecast and the slide with the fund balance, you're going to see that very vividly on what transpired in the core general fund without Measure K.
Does accounting principles allow you to use one-time funds as general fund monies, accounting for that way?
So you mean, are you characterizing Measure K as one-time funds?
Yeah.
It's one-time funds only because it sunsets, but up until that, you have to be, how else were you going to pay for the expenditure load that the city increased?
That is the dilemma.
Yeah.
But I'm just asking.
I think so, yeah. I think you can put Measure K in as a discretionary revenue. Even though it sunsets, you can do that, yeah. It's okay that you have it over here, but this is why for this year's budget, I'm moving the money that Measure K is collecting from a separate fund into the general fund.
I'm not saying that that's not legitimate,
so
but
just keep it transparent, because I'm going to show you another slide that shows you what happens when Measure K goes away in November of 2030.
Pretty obvious.
Okay, so anyway, so Measure K, that's where all of your fund balance is, okay? That's where all your discretionary fund balance is, if you want to characterize Measure K as a discretionary fund balance, which I think you should, because you don't have anything else.
But the necessity or the lack of necessity of voting on whether we're going to move this specific amount of money from the Measure K fund to the general fund, it could be done at any time. That's not interfering with us passing this budget right now.
Yeah, absolutely. So we still have it in a separate fund.
Right, okay.
Yes, to appropriate that, you would need to approve that.
Yeah, because I wouldn't want to do anything that's against the county principles or against what the understanding of the voters are or anything like that. But
Well, we couldn't pass a balanced budget without approving that tonight. It would have to be part of the motion.
Yeah, you're not going to
afterwards.
No, it would just be part of the motion.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
If that's what we get to, yeah.
All right, that's
Well, your general fund's not going to be balanced. I mean, you're still going to burn reserves if you don't have.
Yes.
But at the same time, I'm only moving what's coming in from Measure K. Okay, I want you to see what's left in Measure K and while the general fund starts to diminish. Okay, because that's where we got to solve the problem. Okay, Measure K is an issue. Okay, it should be extended to the extent possible, in some way, shape, or form, if not increased. Okay, but at the same time, the general fund has an expenditure load that at this point in time, absent anything changing, is too high. Your revenue can't match it. Okay, and it can't be expected to match it. There's just no catalyst to increase it by the amount that you need to increase it to match your current expenditure level. Forecast budget update key assumptions. So we've gone over most of this already. So staffing levels for all years in the forecast are updated. Positions are assumed filled. UAL costs have all been updated, and funded liability. Cost allocations have all been updated in the Measure K, again, $1.2 million. So this is a precursor to the forecast. So here's what the forecast looks like. Okay, so this first graph in the forecast looks at the general fund revenues and expenditures with the annual Measure K transfers. Okay, so this is what has already transpired, what is likely to transpire, and what we're budgeting and forecasting to transpire coming in from Measure K. So back in 23-24, nothing happened with Measure K. You had a deficit that year of $2.2 million in your general fund. 24-25, deficit of 216, but I think in that year you brought in $1.6 million in Measure K for that year. In the current fiscal year, 25-26, you see you have essentially a small surplus, and that's because you're bringing in $2 million in Measure K. So your Measure K balance was at one point like $5 million, and now because you've moved more than you've collected to cover a couple of fiscal years in the general fund, you're down to 3.3 at the end of this year. In the next year and all the years after that, I'm only assuming that Measure K is transferring what it's bringing in, $1.2 million and change, basically. But you can see that the deficits in the general fund for the coming year, and keep in mind there's $80,000 worth of one-time stuff built in for some general plan activities. So that's part of that 651 deficit. But after that, it's 513, it's 503, 447. So there's some stability there. It's not sustainable, but it's stable. Okay? We still need to cut that much out of the general fund from an expenditure perspective. And more importantly, maintain the Measure K money on an ongoing basis to achieve those numbers. But assuming that you don't maintain the Measure K fund on an ongoing basis, you can see what happens in 29-30 when Measure K is slated and sunsets to go away. You go back up to the 1.2, then you go back up to the 1.6, all right? Which, ironically, is the original 2.4 less the 700 you've already taken out. So the math is pretty simple here. There's still an issue that needs to be addressed and resolved, both on the revenue side and on the expenditure side potentially. Okay, so this is the fund balance with the Measure K transfer. So you can see this is the coming year, the budget year, where we actually go negative in the general fund. And again, this assumes everything I've just talked about. So it assumes only for the coming year, for 26, 27, and in the future, only Measure K transfers. The only amount of transfer from Measure K is the amount that it brings in. Okay, so you can see that the general fund stays negative the whole time. This chart combines both the general fund balance, which is represented in blue, and the Measure K fund balance, which is represented in orange. So you can see after fiscal 25, 26, 26, 27, that orange bar doesn't decrease or increase. That's because I'm using what Measure K is bringing in and moving that over to the general fund. But you can see that your general fund balance, the blue, goes down significantly over time, okay? And ultimately, they cross. You cross a 0 point in that last year where you go negative for both of those fund balances combined, okay? So then you really have no discretionary reserves at that point, assuming nothing changes. They're gone. This is just another graphical representation of the expenditure load in the general fund. So this shows the base revenue in the general fund. We've gone over these numbers too, $4.6 million. Your total base cost in the general fund, about $6.3 million. So you have a $1.7 million issue, which used to be 2.4. But if you go down to the bottom, what I've done is I've partitioned out a few groups of costs, expenditures. So you can see there that salaries and benefits for all positions in the general fund cost just about $4.9 million, $4.89 million. That $4.9 million in costs in salaries is more than $300,000 more than the base revenues that are coming into the general fund. So therein lies part of the issue, because if you keep those costs in the salaries, you can't afford your liability and property insurance and all the other operating costs that are borne by the general fund and need to be borne by the general fund. Okay, go through these pretty quickly here. So enterprise funds, so the water fund. One thing I wanted to mention about both the core enterprise funds, which is water and wastewater, is that we have not added in any rate increases to the revenue numbers. That has not been done yet. It's almost certain to happen at some point in time in the near future before August, but that will come back to the council, and again, the budgets will be adjusted. But I don't want to guess on what those are going to be and put those in the budget. So these budgets for the water and wastewater fund do not have any rate increases built into them for 26-27. Staff costs in the water fund, about $1.43 million. That represents just under half of all the costs. It's about right. Capital budget in the water fund, $650,000. It's actually only $550,000 because that first one is done. At the end of the day, the water fund will have about $2.6 million in working capital fund balance in it. And again, keep in mind that the revenues may increase a little bit and add more to that expected fund balance once the rates go up. In your sewer fund, you can see that for the current year, 25-26, you have $7.7 million in revenues, $11.2 million in expenditures. This is because you had that very large and expensive solar project, Sizerco project, that was undertaken in that year, in the current year. So that's going to be pretty much a sunk cost, but you're going to be getting back about $2.1 million of that money from the federal government. It's likely to come back as a subsidy to help pay for that project. So that's why you have a sizable increase in revenue, $6.1 million versus the expenditures of $3.6 million. So that includes $2.1 million in grant revenue related to Sizerco. Again, no rate increases. Staff costs, about 40% of the budget as a whole. That's okay. And then at the end of the day, the sewer fund will have about $2.4 million in working capital. So it's a good number.
Do you know, Andy, is that sewer balance, is that tied to our USDA loan, as we're required to have, what, 2 or 3 payments, there's some guarantee, you have to have a reserve.
You're talking about debt service coverage?
Debt service coverage.
Yeah, so I'm not sure. Since you bring it up, though, I'll check on that and make sure that's going to be part of what I'm doing for your audit for the coming year, for 24-25. So that's actually the next thing I'm working on, is the debt, to make sure that you're meeting all your debt covenants, coverage requirements. In other words, you have to show that you have enough in reserves to cover 1.25 times, of the debt. So anyway, but yeah, that's a good question. But we'll make sure. So when we do the audit,
there's no third account. I mean, there's no.
No. This is the aggregate.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is the aggregate. Okay. Airport fund. Another small enterprise. This fund has a deficit fund balance of $300,000 in it at the end of next year, assuming everything comes to fruition. There's 127 right now. It has more than that. It's deficit fund balance. There have been a lot of staff costs in the past that have been charged to the airport fund that are just sunk costs of the airport fund. So we right-sized everything, and now the only staff that's being charged to the airport fund is a portion of the administrative overhead costs that I showed you earlier. Okay, so there's no staff directly charged to the airport anymore.
You said it really quickly, but I want to make sure that the public understands what you just said. In the past, airport money has been used to fund City of Willits employees who may not have been doing airport work.
That's a fair statement.
But we're, as you used the word, we're right-sizing it this year to reflect a much truer and more accurate cost separation of.
Your staff has done that, yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
There was really no revenue source in the airport fund, so I mean, it was kind of a meaningless charade.
I get it, but
there was no income to.
Yeah, I mean, the only revenue I've isolated, the only revenue I've isolated in the airport fund, and I need to do some more analysis on this with Joseph, is I used to work in Auburn. We have an airport in Auburn as well, so I'm very familiar with airports and the revenue sources and all that. But what you have coming in is your state funding. So there's an amount that comes from the State Department of Transportation. I think it's $10,000 a year that you can get. You haven't received that for a couple of years, so there's $20,000 built in, and you can go back, because I've gotten 4 payments in 1 year for another city. So the state funding is built in, your hangar rentals, your fuel sales, and other revenues. And I do want to go out there and do some work with your fuel. I don't know how your fuel works. There's something going on with your fuel
I hope we
inventory.
talk about it later, because it was on
Well,
the list.
something needs to be adjusted, not to the detriment, it's just something doesn't appear right, because you have a couple $100,000 in fuel inventory on the books, all right? And that's sitting as an asset, and if it should be expense, that's where it belongs. So we need to do an inventory of the fuel, a correct inventory, determine what it is, determine the cost, and determine what's being sold. So I just built in the numbers based on what I'm seeing in your general ledger.
Well, you put like $5,000 is all you had in fuel revenue.
$5,000
In fuel revenue for the airport.
Yeah. And that, you should get that. I think that's what you've received this year. So, yeah.
Well, that's measly. I mean, it's filling up 2 airports.
That's what I'm saying. So that's what I want to go in and check.
Wait. You just said that the records show we have about $200,000 worth of inventory? Our tanks couldn't hold that if we wanted to.
Yeah, that's what the trial balance says. That's what I got to review.
All right.
Yeah.
Looking forward to that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. It's obviously not correct.
Yeah.
So I need to review where that goes. So becomes a simple accounting equation at that point, and needs to be somewhere else. Debits have to equal credits. So it'll be interesting to find out what's going on there. There's no capital built into the airport, and again, there's no staff directly charged to the airport for 26, 27. But that fund still has about a $300,000 deficit in it.
Oil I bought or something.
Right now, but you don't see the net upcoming fiscal year adding to the deficit.
It could be. When I get through reconciling 24, 25, which I'm doing for your audit, that could change.
So if you point out we don't have $200,000 worth of fuel, that could be a $500,000 deficit.
That's correct.
I see, okay.
Exactly right. Because that debit that's an asset becomes a debit that's an expense.
Got to become more, sure.
Yep. Okay. Closed landfill fund. Here's another fun fund. So we've talked about this a little bit, only because we built in the general fund component of the expenditure that is needed to offset the proposed landfill, the closed landfill costs for the year, which are about $175,000. Again, this fund, we've belabored this a little bit, but should be half paid for by the county, half paid for by the city. But right now, because of the way the city has been treating this fund in the past, and no revenues have been coming in, even from the general fund, where the general fund should have paid its half. You can wait for the county, try to keep billing them, sue them, do whatever you want to do, but the general fund should have been paying all along. But this fund has a negative $1.2 million deficit in it. So that's going to need to be dealt with. I think that your staff needs to work closely with the county to determine what can be recovered from the past, if we have actual receipts and everything and bills, and can put everything together to get at least some of that money for maybe multiple years. Try to do that, and then we'll determine what the ultimate general fund contribution needs to be and get this fund to be whole. But unfortunately, that's a real number. All right, so then now, we're almost done. Okay, so now I'm on the fund groups. So not a whole lot going on in the fund groups. We went over the meat of the budget just in the last few slides. So transportation, just a couple of notes here. In your transportation fund, most of this is for capital and for streetlights and things like that from gas tax. But you have your East Valley Bridge replacement, West Mendocino Phase 2 design in the transportation fund. And then you also have some money from RMRA for the striping projects in your gas tax RMRA fund. Now, I have to call this out to be transparent. It's very likely that in the future, to the extent your general fund does not have $200,000 of street-related costs using general fund discretionary money to pay for those street-related costs, and you do not, okay? You have very little, like maybe $30,000, okay, right now. you may not be able to collect future RMRA SB1 monies. All right, so those fund monies may not be available to you. The backstop to that is you still will get your gas tax. That's not going to go away, okay? And you still have your transportation tax, which is just the sales tax that comes in related to transportation. So you still have that for your transportation-related program, but the state controller's office may come back this year and say, unless we can absolutely show that the general fund has $240,000 in change in what's called a maintenance of effort towards receiving that SB1 money. Keep in mind, when SB1 was adopted, the state did not want you to supplant that money into existing programs. They said to get this money, you have to spend what you spend on average for 3 years. For transportation costs in your general fund, you have to keep doing that to receive this money. Okay, because they thought everybody's going to take this money and just supplant all this, all right, which a lot of would have done. Well, you don't have a lot in the general fund, okay? Not what you used to have, because you got the transportation tax and you're putting all your costs there and you're using your general fund for other things. So stand by on that, but there's probably more to come on that once we do the street report for this year, which is due like in October, and put all that together. We'll know more. And so at the end of the day, you'll still have about $500,000 in change for future transportation projects, which is a good number.
That amount seems to have gone down. It's the same. It's a perpetual half-cent sales tax that was passed by the city in like 2003 or
Right. Okay.
something like that. And it seemed to me that is gone down quite a bit, because I thought that used to bring in about $1 million.
Okay, so I'll share with you what the mayor brought up just a few minutes ago, and that is you had, at one point in time, a lot of staff being charged of that fund.
Oh, I'm not talking about the expenses again.
Okay.
I'm talking about the revenue side.
Oh, yeah, it's about 800 grand.
Well, it's you just got hit.
Your sales tax in this city has been pretty stagnant, if not going down.
I know, but you've been bumping up the other sales tax revenue slightly, and this one.
Just slightly. Just slightly. So, I mean, we can go back and look at this. I think you just had a meeting with Meeting Services today, which is your sales tax folks, and I think that they give you a report. So if it shows something different that's material, we can definitely change that.
I'm just curious about that.
Yeah. Okay, these are your capital improvement funds. Only one fund in this group has anything appropriated, and that is related to your California Clean Grant that you're getting for the projects we discussed earlier, so $805,000 there. And there's still a couple $100,000 there that can only be used for certain capital improvement purposes. These are police-related funds, so nothing is appropriated out of these funds. There's just under $200,000 that's likely to be available. In these funds, a couple of them have small deficits, but I think those can be offset by some of the other positives in the other funds. But these funds can only be used for police-related purposes, so I think that's contingent on staff to work with Chief Fay to see exactly what we might be able to spend these monies on, and if indeed, even though it's only one time, maybe defray some costs out of the general fund to save some money there. Other fund groups, special revenue funds, other funds, so nothing here. Most of these funds are revolving loan funds, where at one point in time in the past, you may have received a grant from the State Department of Housing and Community Development through the federal government for, I'm going to make up programs now, maybe housing rehabilitation loans, assistance with home buyer programs, those sorts of things, business development loans. So these monies are loaned out, okay, and then as they're paid back, that money comes back, it becomes part of your fund balance, but it can only be used for future loans for the same purpose, consistent with the reuse plan, which is what it's called. All right. Agency funds, this is the last constructed slide. So this is, again, your former redevelopment agency. You can see here there's no activity, no revenue, no expenditures, but this fund's got about 324 grand in it right now. Okay, so that money got there somehow. It's in there somehow. More than likely, the city will need to work with the County Mendocino Oversight Board, which basically oversaw all of the redevelopment activity for all the former redevelopment agencies, and determine whether or not this money needs to be given back to the auditor controller for distribution as property tax back to the taxing entities, of which you would get about 20%. So more than likely, if that's the case, which I think it is, you'll get about $65,000 of this 324 in your general fund. And that'll come back into the general fund. Okay, budget and forecast development, next steps. So again, finalize the 24-25 activity and the 25-26 pre-audit actuals. So this is critical. We're going to learn some new things as we go through this, as we've discussed tonight, and consider any potential audit adjustment impacts on the available fund balances that we're presenting before you tonight. Preliminarily close fiscal 25-26 ledger in preparation for the future audit. Finalize revenue expenditure accruals and adjustments. That's being done. And then the gist of the whole conversation tonight. Continue strategizing methodologies for balancing the general fund core budget and forecasts and increasing general fund core reserves, where we're looking at cost reductions, further cost reductions, program and service efficiencies, and additional reorganization opportunities, revenue enhancements and extensions, and the continuation or the continued use of Measure K, because that is got to be considered a discretionary revenue source until it goes away. So with that, I am done with the budget, and I will turn it back over to city manager and or the council for any comments or questions.
I didn't see anything on the rail trail. I mean, it's a $9.2 million project.
Yeah, is that on? Yeah. So it's still ongoing, and it should be in the capital improvement as the balance in, right, same place as the Clean California. We have about $4 million left to spend. We should be done in December. And it's a dollar for dollar.
It's not in, I couldn't find it anywhere in here.
I concur, it should be in that, the capital improvement slide, right, with the
And it
grant
has
funding.
cash.
Is there more money coming in than is going to be spent for the?
It's going to be a balance.
Okay.
That's the intent.
But as the council was saying, in our budget, in our line item budget, it's not in here.
I mean, I don't see it.
Maybe it is,
It's for 26-27, it's not.
so it had, okay, and that's a fair question. Has anybody ever seen a budget for the Great Redwood Trail capital improvement project, which is occurring in Willits? Has anybody ever seen a budget for that?
Well, it's a contract, and I'm sure it's,
Well, I know, but we've had some change orders too.
yeah, well, I mean, it is a use of funds in, a substantial use of funds. We were very concerned that it was going to take
Sink the ship, yeah.
take payments that were beyond our reserves to carry the receivable.
And the presumption right now that's built into the budget, by virtue of it not being there, is that revenues equal expenditures. Ultimately.
Yeah.
Well, actually, one of my questions comes up when we get there.
Yeah, okay, I just.
So, all right. All right, questions from the council for Andy.
Do you want to go first?
Well, I mean, Tom, I just don't know any other way to do this, but to start going through this budget,
Okay.
page by page.
Well, hold on a second.
Read it.
Joseph, do you have anything more to add to this presentation before we just get into the hardcore? Questions, okay? Do you have anything to add?
No, sir.
All right, we're going to start the questions.
Before you go by page by page, which is probably a pretty good idea, can I ask a couple of general questions, just understanding of what we're looking at here? Would that be okay with you?
That'd work for me.
I have some general ones too.
Okay, general questions,
I mean,
okay?
I have a whole bunch of specific questions as well, but just in general. So what we were given in the packet here, there is general revenue and expenditure detail page here. And on the title, it says final fiscal year 2023-24, and then right next to it is preliminary final. By final, can we take that to mean that that's the audited numbers?
Preliminary.
Okay. So by the one that says preliminary, is that the unaudited numbers?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's more the unaudited, and the first one is more the preliminary because it hasn't actually been approved. Okay, I thought as much. Okay. All right. Let's see here. I also had a generalized question, and it wasn't about a specific account. I can point to a few examples here because you mentioned the cost of healthcare going up.
Right.
There was certainly some movement with the full-time equivalents between funds and accounts.
Right.
But there were a couple of just looking at the healthcare only. I was a little bit surprised on the randomness of the amount of change. I guess I was expecting a little bit more that they would be, if it went up 30%, they would generally go up all 30%. Minus, of course, the FTE moving from place to place. But there were even some accounts where, the salaries went down 60%, but the healthcare only went down 10%. And that seemed a little unusual, and there was a lot of situations on that. And lastly, the last example I use is that in the city council, city clerk version, I know that her workload, her full-time equivalency moved into that category, but, and that explained some of the salary increase, but the healthcare for that went up 298%, and that seemed again a little unusual. But my general question to that is, why is there such a discrepancy?
People changed plans. So there was a period of open enrollment, and the numbers that are before you represent what people changed to. So there was a massive change in health benefits from one year to another, both in the plans and the plans that are being offered, and more importantly, the costs. So some people, I know some people went from like a family plan to maybe a two-party plan, or from a two-party plan to a single plan, those sorts of things.
Oh, I see. Because it's just the changes in the options and plans themselves accounts for some of that. Okay, well, I appreciate that. Okay, and then beyond that, I believe I just have a whole bunch of specific questions, but those are some of the broad ones that I wanted to get out ahead of time.
All right. And again, this is a broad question, but in some of them I can kind of figure it out, like HR. There's a lot of specific, since we've gone to a contractor versus an individual as far as some of the specificity, but in a lot of spots, I noticed proposed budget 26, 27, and there's nothing over here in a couple of these funds. I went through a couple of the funds where there were none, or there were, I wasn't sure if that was.
For which fund?
I guess this one here would be non-departmental proposed general fund, and proposed budget, even though it showed, I looked at the final there, that's just one example. A final for 23-24, so I'm assuming that meant that somebody's no longer there. And I found it in, also in pool operations, another one where we charged some health insurance state tax. I'm assuming that maybe somebody was in that department that isn't anymore.
Right. So I see what you're looking at here. For the non-departmental specifically, there's some anomalies, and these are real numbers when I'm looking at 23-24. This is what's in your general ledger, and this is what's been audited, okay? So like this big number in here for medical benefits, I don't know what that represents. That number was there long before I got here. It just stayed there. Presumably, it offsets some of the cost in health benefits for other general fund departments where it might be lower, but we'd have to look at that in the aggregate. So these numbers are just right out of your general ledger, and they're what's posted there. I don't know if at that time it was kind of a catch-all, because you were moving from one system to another, so that's where it was decided that certain costs were going to go, but that's where they ended up.
Oh, okay. I mean, some made sense, like in the airport, now that we're not plugging people in there for the budget. I was able to
Yeah.
follow that, but these other ones, I was just wondering why there wouldn't be.
So you bring up a really interesting point, Councilmember, because it's really difficult to do a comparison.
Yeah.
When you're looking at, especially 23, 24 numbers moving forward, because those numbers were done. Those were solid, those were just done. And whether they were done right or not, the fact of the matter is in 24, 25, a lot changed, okay? And then in 25, 26, a lot more changed. So to try to get some linear progression of one account all the way across multiple years is not going to work, okay? And more importantly, I'm not going to have an answer for that because it so much changed over time by so many people and so many systems. We're tracking all of this, so it's just.
No, and I get that. I think, and maybe to what Bruce was saying earlier, that in the future, I mean, this is better than we had last year in that respect, that if the page in front of some of the expenditures or some of the revenues had some detail to tell us that 2026, you have, 10 cops versus 13 cops. And some are one-time expenses or whatever, then it would make sense to follow.
So, like maybe a budget box that says in the police department, here's what it pays for.
Yeah, because that way, historically, the next council may be going through this and going, what happened there? So that would give us an opportunity to look at it and go, oh, okay, that's why that's up.
Yeah, that's easy to do.
Well, it was labeled out. I mean, it's like on, in the city council, under 50100,
Oh, that part.
and things like that, then it line item and says, yeah, we added 2 FTEs or 1.2 or.
Right. We can, so.
Like budget notes in preparation for audit notes.
I'm just going to be real candid here.
Yeah.
Okay. You just declared a fiscal emergency on March 9th, and it's taken a whole heck of a lot of work to put this budget together the way you're seeing it right now.
Oh, yeah.
And it's appreciated.
Yeah, that's why I wanted to preface my comment that, in the future it'd be easier, but I get it for what we're getting now. Especially if we get in a situation where, the bargaining units come forward and say, well, why can't we have 13 versus, why are you giving me 10 versus 13, or why are you giving me 7 instead of 13? Well, yeah, that was this year, and then this year, and this is what we have, and so.
I am happy to work with Joseph to provide you that verbiage.
Yeah, I mean.
There you go, yeah, Mr. Parker.
I'm not casting aspersions on the past budget, maybe I am, but it's fair to say this year's budget does not include a shell game. Is that fair?
No, there's no shell game going on.
I get it, and I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I mean, this is very transparent.
I've tried to do that.
Yeah. So that was.
All right, so any more general questions?
I guess this kind of qualifies, as a general question. In the enterprise funds, I have always had a little bit of a problem with it, but they've always listed depreciation as an expense in that, and I could not find. I'm not saying they're not there.
So that's a good question. I'll give you my thought process on budgeting for depreciation. Depreciation is not a cash expense. The budget tracks cash, okay? It's cash in and cash out, things that you bring in and things that you pay for. Depreciation is an anticipated cost of what it's going to take to replace something in the future. To the extent you wanted to, rather than budgeting for depreciation as an expense, you can create a reserve in your capital funds, or in your enterprise funds, water and sewer specifically, to account for that. So if your depreciation in any year might be $300,000, we know that we're going to add $300,000 to a reserve down here in a capital reserve. Now, that all assumes that your rate study that promulgates what your Prop 218 says that you can charge for a 5-year period of time, assumed that as part of the rate. That it's assuming that capital is going to be replaced consistent with your depreciation schedule. Otherwise, there's no match. and you're just going to be throwing money in there that might not be needed in the future. So that's why I don't do depreciation.
Well, I mean, I've used that argument with a number of auditors and finance directors for the city, and I never won it before. They always insisted that depreciation, accounting principles required that we put depreciation in there.
In your government-wide statements, absolutely. And in your audit, absolutely. From a budget, no. The budget is not, it's a citywide, it's a city document. It's not your financial statements.
All right, so Bruce, you want to go specific questions?
Well, I mean, Tom, I just
Go to the start page.
kind of think that we,
As we do this to the council, we're all going to stay with, when we go from one department, we'll all ask a question in one department, and we'll go to the other department.
right.
Okay.
So we should start on Department 1.
I mean, we're on the general fund. I numbered it page 3 on mine.
Right.
Okay.
Okay, so,
Before we get into the departments, can I ask the general question?
no, I mean, we're,
Okay, don't forget it, please. Okay, good.
so the first budget I see under this is the city council budget.
Department
Or no,
1000.
the general fund revenue expenditure detail. On page, what I have is page 4. I mean, what stands out in it is city council expenditures go from $112,000 up to $317,000.
Okay, and the detail for that is about 5 pages later, where you have a complete line item detail of the city council budget as a whole. So in looking at that real quickly, I can tell you that it's the salaries and wages.
Right.
That is the preponderance of it, and health insurance is the rest of it. So it's all pretty much in salaries and wages.
So
And keep in mind that we did a complete reconstruction of how salaries and wages are being allocated into certain departments. Rather than taking folks and allocating them to 7 different general fund departments, we tried to put them into one general fund department where it made sense. For example, community development director might be in planning. Okay? The finance director might be in finance. He's not going to be in, a portion of his salary is not going to be in the city clerk budget. It's not going to be in the administration budget, none of this stuff anymore. It just doesn't make sense to do that. Okay, they're core employees. That's why I showed you the slide that I showed you with the aggregate of the employees and what changed over time by fund. Okay, so obviously in the general fund, the costs and the FTEs went down significantly, but how they're partitioned out between the departments, it's going to go, some are going to go up and some are going to go down because we changed that quite a bit.
So, Andy, you're going to have to tell me what page you're referring to.
So it would be, okay, so the revenue and expenditure page, it says 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pages after that. It says City of Willits, General Fund Expenditure Detail, Proposed Budget, Department 1100, City Council, starts with salaries and benefits, and then it goes to operating expenses. Every department has a schedule for all the line items.
Thank you.
Sorry to speak out of turn here, can you just refer to the numbers at the bottom of the page?
No, they do not.
We don't have the numbers.
Okay.
Bruce, it's Department 1100.
Yeah, that'd be better if you go by departments, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, I'm on it now.
Cool.
So so you're saying under salaries and wages of city council, you put administrative costs in that?
I'd have to go back, I have to go back and see what makes up this $96,000, yes. So
You haven't tripled the wages of the city council?
I think a portion of,
That's what it looks like.
That might turn
A
into the
portion of
hundreds.
We make, so we make $200 a month.
I think Dolores' position is in there.
Yeah, I think Dolores' position
Yeah.
moved.
Well, I just, it doesn't.
Yeah.
I think it points out that, a lot of us would have preferred to see the full-time equivalent.
Yep.
Movement, we could
Understood.
see that, because clearly the numbers reflect that that did happen.
Right.
So we'll get that soon, I appreciate that. But goes back to that.
Well, there's no,
No, since we're on that page, can I ask a question?
We can put a supplement together for you in a day.
Well, I just want to tell the citizens of Willits, we did not get a raise, nor are asking for a raise. We all get $200 a month in health benefits.
Well, can I,
Yeah.
okay, so, and I guess this might be a question for Joseph or whatever. Again, as Tom put it out, that we didn't get a raise. In fact, since we passed Measure K, I have not taken a stipend. I do take the health insurance. But that's down there is also going up quite a bit down there. I know, Joseph, you had mentioned that there's going to be another open enrollment, because I didn't change insurance. I kept what was supposed to happen, just I said let it ride till we knew differently, but apparently we're supposed to have an open enrollment at some point. And I'm talking towards future here, if we're going to make any changes or whatever. If we as a council decide, hey, we can't afford for us to have health insurance anymore or to take our stipends, I would like to see that in the future, even if it's not for tonight's meeting, to see what that looks like. So that we as a council can come forward and say, you know what, we have to take one for the team. If we're going to ask employees in the future, I'm assuming how the process works is there'll be another open enrollment where a different provider will be out there, we'll be looking at different health insurance, and we'll come to our employees and we will say, the Pepsi doesn't exist anymore, you have to take Diet Coke now, or a version of that, and that's how it's done. Is that correct?
That's my understanding of what's going to happen now.
And when that happens, same thing for us up here, either unless we can recognize a big enough savings for us to continue to get health insurance or whatever, then at that point, then maybe we need to look at, this is the hit that we're hitting the city with, and then as a council, we need to come forward and make that decision. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
well, I think it needs to be on the, as we go through this budget and see things that are discretionary spending, and we have the plight that we have, I think that the health insurance is a major cost to the city for these people, for all up here.
Well, and I get that, but I know that there's a contractual thing that we have to basically.
Well, I
then say-
understand that it's just like when we laid people off, you have to work through the pre-existing contract before you actually see that savings. But I don't know how you could not put that on your long list of
No, and that's
ways
why.
to save $150,000. Just is one of those.
Well, there's other costs associated with that too, because when you don't offer certain benefits to a public service role, you limit the quality of individuals you're going to get. Without health benefits, basically the only people who can run for office are people who are independently wealthy or have a position someplace else who could have health care. And I would hate to think that healthcare could be, to stop somebody from participating, because we need a much broader voice in our democracy than just people who already have everything we need. I'm pretty fortunate myself, but I wouldn't, this is the benefit one of the things I enjoyed when I did run for office was this idea of healthcare. I don't need the $200, that's not really the issue. It was with the healthcare that was beneficial to me, and that's what I get too. So, there's two sides to that, and it's not just about saving money. We can save money by cutting health insurance from our workers too, but I wouldn't ask them to do that, and I doubt they would ask me to do that. So I think there are other ways of saving money, and there are plenty of ways to do that, but.
I'm sorry, but I think that at $922,000, 20% of our general fund expenditure in health insurance, if we're not talking about a way to trim that expense, we're not doing our job. So I believe that is, every other business that I'm associated with has had to deal with adjusting their health program that they offer because
Well, adjusting the health program we offer is one thing, but that's not what you're saying. You're saying certain individuals don't get health insurance, and that's kind of a different thing. So, I mean, yeah, we should be looking at that, but we're pretty limited. We're working with public budgets and public health care our whole career, and this is pretty par for the course, and it's going to keep going up. As Mr. Heath said, it's a statewide problem, it's a nationwide problem. We're not going to nickel and dime and suddenly we save ourselves. I don't know. We have different opinions, that's all.
No, I mean, I think nickel and diming, I don't think there's any dollars to be had. I think it's a whole game of nickels and dimes. Short of just incorporating the city.
Right, so we're somewhat philosophical here, and I'd love for it to get direct questions.
Well, so the next one I have on staying on page 4 is the cannabis program showed, revenue budget or expenditures, and it went to 0 in this year. Is that no longer
So it's no longer a cost center from an expenditure perspective. And that was at the request of staff.
what was the rationale behind that?
When the cannabis ordinance was written and the cannabis program was established, it was the city leadership at the time chose to track those revenue and expenses directly to those programs separately from the rest of the community development department budget. Ultimately, those funds just got folded throughout the budget, and it no longer necessarily made sense to track it separately at that point.
So where does it show up in licenses and permits? Where does the revenue side of that then show?
The revenue is still coming in where it typically came in, so that is in.
Well, and Desi, correct me if I'm wrong, but we probably still have some expenditures too, right? When somebody goes out to do an inspection of some sort of process, depending on what it is, I mean, obviously maybe negligible, but.
No, so the community development staff still administers the program, and we recognize some healthy revenue from the program. Not having it directly in front of me, I mean, Andy's saying it does still show up in the budget, yeah. And it more than pays for itself as far as revenue versus expenses.
Yeah, because that was the original intent, that it was supposed to be, the city was not supposed to subsidize the cannabis program. It was supposed
Correct, and I think that was the logic behind tracking it separately within the budget.
Yeah.
So is it just under the general heading of taxes, franchise fees, license permits, charges for services, governmental revenues? Where is it now?
So Councilmember Burton, the revenue is it's on the first page. There's a revenue detail in your general fund as well. It's like your expenditure detail, every single line item for your revenue. Behind the page that aggregates all the revenues by type and then all the departments is the first page of your revenue detail. And in that first group, which is taxes, it's there.
Yes.
Local tax cannabis, 41340, 180 grand. And then you also have on the next page, the permit fees, 42,400 medical cannabis permit fee of 40,000 budget.
I'm sorry, what account number was it again?
I didn't hear the question.
I'm sorry, what account number was it?
The first one was count number 41340. Local tax dash cannabis. And then on the page after that, next account is
Oh, okay, I see.
42400 medical cannabis permit fee in the total charges for services.
Under the general fund revenue detail, my page 7, it's 4848000 miscellaneous. In 25-26, it was budgeted at $365,000. Now it's budgeted at 10.
Well, there was some, again, this is just where something was put. I don't know if it was, actually it was received in, if you look in 24-25, that's where it was all received. So there was some big revenue amount. I don't know if it was a grant or something, that's where it was classified. That's where it stayed. And then it was rebudgeted when we did the budget in 25-26, and then in mid-year I changed it because it had already come in. So the next column reduced it to 10,000.
That blip then is most likely just, I mean, I don't mean to discourage anybody else, but it seems more likely that they didn't know where to put it, they put it there temporarily, and
That's
then
exactly
you
what it
corrected
is.
that.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. I hate the category miscellaneous, by the way.
I guess would that be true for the other miscellaneous also? I mean, I hate to see miscellaneous. I mean, you see miscellaneous, that could mean anything. You see something over $250,000 miscellaneous, that's really troublesome.
Yeah.
But police and, it's the Department 2200 and 4200 Parks and Rec and Police. That same miscellaneous budget was also significantly cut. Can we assume that was for similar reasons, that for some unknown reason in the past, they put it towards that, but we couldn't match it to reality, so it's wherever it's supposed to be now.
Create another account if you have to. You know, if it's something.
Just hate the word miscellaneous.
Call it what it is.
Yeah, it's like the utility door in the kitchen. Yeah, it's not great.
All right, Bruce, continue on.
So my next one is my page 8. It's the general fund expenditure detail, Department 1,000, and then number.
Which fund or which department?
Department 1,000.
Department 1,000.
1,000.
Salaries and benefits 55,750. Medical benefits all employees. A couple of years ago, 23-24, it was up at $267,000, and now it is it's zero, not budgeted. I guess what I was looking for, Andy, was, I mean, I didn't know that 922 number that you brought up earlier, but I was looking for that 922 number, and I thought, well, here, medical benefits, it seems like maybe that's a piece of it, but.
I'd have to look at the
So
information.
where do we find then the 9?
You'd have to go back and look at the detail that was prepared for 23-24.
No. I mean, in 26-27, where do I see?
Oh, for the 669?
No, for the total 900.
If I was going to go look for the 922 that you were.
Which number are you talking about? I don't. Oh, the healthcare.
I'm going to call a break in 4 minutes, just to let you know, we're going to have a 10-minute break.
Yeah, I think what it is.
Was it 267?
No, he wants the.
No, like I say, I was trying to find out what the total healthcare costs for the city were.
In which year?
Well, for the present year, and I came across.
So what you can do is you
have to aggregate it from each department?
Yeah.
Okay.
And add up medical, dental, and vision.
So I think, Tom, the next one, maybe we take up before we take a break, is the charitable items. They've all been, we zeroed them out last year, they're zero again this year.
Right, you know, the food bank, the art center, the grains and senior center, we just can't do it this year. Like, let's hope we get to a point where we can do it again.
And I'm not arguing that, but I think it just needs to be
brought up.
Yeah.
brought up.
Well, we probably shouldn't have done it in 24, 25, but we didn't have the numbers.
So you want to take a break?
How much more do you have?
Well, I mean, I'm on page 10 of 100.
10-minute break. We are back, and Andy has a hard leave at 9:30. So if we do not get through our questions tonight, we can continue this. If we can, we can discuss the budget, but we're not going to cut anybody short. So continue on, Bruce.
Well, I don't mean to monopolize anything here. I'm happy to listen to somebody else too.
Well, if we're done with Department 1000, we can go to
Okay.
Department 1100.
Okay, Ruth, take a break for a minute. Matthew, you're up.
Okay, I had a note on there, but it's already been addressed, so I was just curious about the large increase. You've already addressed that, so 1100 is done for me unless somebody else has anything else.
Okay.
I did not have anything else other than the
Okay.
Okay, so we just go run through these pages here, yes?
1,200.
1200. There was nothing specifically other than the general increase of healthcare, and you already explained all that. The liability went up, all that stuff is already explained. My next question's on 1230, if no one has a question on
1230, okay. Pool operations.
Yeah, pool operations. So I mean, it says here that our total operation cost here is $67,000, and on the front, in the summary in the beginning, our pool revenue was $30,000. So I mean, basically, we're spending $30,000 a year just to have a pool for 3 months. Okay. I mean, I just wanted to make sure I didn't misunderstand it. Now, that's a lot of money going through there, and it's a lot of work, and we're paying for maintenance, and we're getting it for 3 months for city use. Now, I know this, we're doing it at school, but it just seems like that's a big negative.
It's highly typical of Parks and Recreation programs to not be cost recovery, especially swimming programs.
That's fair.
There have been years when the city did not open the pool.
Anything more on that? All right, moving on.
1300?
You have one? You have a question?
Yeah, what was, and maybe this is just another correction, on a Department 1300, I'm looking at 55,750 medical, all employees, it just got scratched out to zero. I mean,
So
how is that different than?
This is one of those pots where all the medical costs at one point in time for certain fiscal years were showing up, and they were going there, and they were going into two different buckets. Then it changed.
Is all that gonna be,
Yeah.
that's gonna fall away as time goes
Right.
on, the next year when that
Right.
doesn't show up? Okay.
Right.
All right, that's all I have.
I had a couple things there, Matthew.
Yes, sir.
Under software subscriptions,
I can't hear you.
65,430.
I have to see you to hear you.
Software subscription.
Software subscriptions,
Right.
I'm sorry, I gotta speak up.
We're in 1300.
65,430. Even in the 25 mid-year budget, we had $30,000 allocated to that, and we're down to 3.
I'd have to see if,
I figured it was a portion,
yeah, I'd have to go back and look at that, on why it was reduced. I mean, obviously it was reduced for a reason. I'm not sure, it may have something to do with the fact that all of those types of expenditures, especially for mass scale software that may have been allocated to the finance department specifically before, is now in that information technology fund, Fund 110.
so this includes like Springbrook and, the ongoing.
Yes.
And that would also include Microsoft subscriptions and all of that.
That actually makes more sense now.
I would, and then, Andy, I was just curious where you were in finance, where your contract is in finance.
It should be in accounting and audit. Audit and accounting services?
Auditing and accounting?
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
I just thought that was probably all
Yeah.
audit, but it's not. Okay.
And hopefully the city is splitting my costs, between, well, actually, no, it doesn't make any difference because it's all allocated through overhead, so forget it.
All right, what else, Bruce?
No, that's it under.
Okay, moving on.
I'm sorry, I just want to go back over that. You said your contract was listed under what? Which one?
Right there.
It should be under accounting and auditing, audit and.
Under accounting, okay.
Yeah.
So what about the one that's under contract other? Still in the 1400s, operating and other expenses, 65,460. There was an allocated amount last budget, 5,000, and now it's 75,000. Is that, oh, I'm looking at 1,400, I'm
It's
sorry.
a zeroed out, it's zero. A contract other.
No, I apologize, I was on the
Okay.
wrong page.
All
Okay,
right.
1,300, we're done, thank you.
All right.
At 1,400, that must be much more, basically.
And some of those costs, some of those minor contractual costs and things might be like trustee fees for debt service issues and things you got to pay to banks to maintain your trustee accounts and all that on an ongoing basis. Typically, when you see 2,500 or 3,000,
And
that's what
then we
that's
had a
for.
service, didn't we, that we were doing our credit cards through and some of this other stuff that would be a contract, the ones we were processing our credit cards and some other stuff.
Yeah, those are here somewhere.
Yeah.
All right, who has the next one?
Let's see here.
I'm assuming this in 1,400, the 65,460, the $75,000 contract there is for much more for much less, right?
That's for,
I think so,
yes,
too.
yes. And you can see that essentially replaced all the staff costs.
Right.
Okay, 1,500 legal services is,
That's Jim.
that's, yeah, okay, that's legal. And the contract others are the other legal people we hire, like our union negotiator and all the other.
Yeah, or water, or whatever it is.
Check. Okay, that's all I'm gonna do. So that's, I'm sorry, I'm moving on. 1,600 to elections. 7,000 is obviously for the election. We have it every other year,
Right.
right? Who are we actually paying to, though?
County administrator.
County.
Okay, that's who we're paying.
They sent us a bill based on, right, how many?
Yes, they sent us a bill based on, with the elections having 2 seats open, the processing, all of that.
All right, chief, you're up.
2,000s.
We're at 2,000. Any questions?
The shift differential went away from our previous budget, 25-26, to our current budget, 26-27. Do we still pay for shift differential, or are we accounting for that separately in a different way?
For what line item?
Oh, I'm on Department 2,000 for police
Shift
administration.
differential. When they
Yes.
work graveyard shift, they get extra.
Yeah, 5130.
There should be, the police administration is the chief. And he doesn't get shift
You
differential.
Okay.
So this is another one of those accounting
Got it.
anomalies, and the way things were coded in the past versus the way they're coded in the future. So from a shift differential perspective, it is budgeted, but it's likely in the forecast. It's all rolled up into regular salaries.
I think most of my questions kind of center around that weird thing too. Yeah, that makes sense.
Any other police questions?
Done with 2,000.
Anybody have police questions?
I guess Brittany changed from her previous role too during this period, right?
I think she's in administration also.
Yeah, but would she have been salaried or not, or hourly?
Hourly.
So she would have qualified for if she had to work dispatch, right?
Correct.
But that's not in here now.
Correct.
Okay, any other police questions?
I don't have any.
She's pretty happy. All right, we're going to planning. 3,000. Questions?
Professional services, planning, Department 3,000. 65,400. We had a budget last year of 5,000. We went up to 82,500. I was curious what that entails. What is professional services under the planning?
Yeah, so again, this is back to what Andy pointed out in the slideshow, and I was articulating on based on Mayor Allman's question. This is to support the state mandated housing element update of the general plan. And as I mentioned, it'll spur the need to update the safety element as well. And these are expenses that are going to hit us in the next, this fiscal cycle. I will note that there is, in the budget towards the beginning, there is $33,000 in, I believe, what's our general plan maintenance fee. It's a fee we collect through building permits. And it is earmarked for projects such as this. So if it pleases the council, we may wish to use that funding to reduce the prospective cost to consultants. I'll also note that, like I mentioned earlier, there's some the safety element update specifically based on some new Assembly and Senate bills, state law, may require a traffic engineer type individual, which we don't currently have on staff, to do the emergency evacuation assessments for certain areas of the city based on criteria that's established by the state. That work may need to be completed in order to get the safety element approved. I will, try to understand if there's a way to kind of recognizing the size of the city and our current situation, if there's a way to avoid that cost, I'll certainly look to support that. But I do want to have that in the budget in case that's the way that we need to go. Again, with the housing element, we'll explore ways to reduce costs, but based on the conversation that I've had with other jurisdictions, with some of the consulting groups, I at least stand confident we won't need more than that, but we'll try to keep those costs to a minimum and take on whatever we can at the staff level to keep those costs low.
Thank you.
But maybe, we could use the $33,000, I think it was, to reduce that $83,000 number.
Quick question, Dusty, and not for tonight, but on some of these ongoing planning expenses that looks like they hit us cyclically every 5 years or whatever, is that something we should be weighting in our fees and looking at increasing our fees to cover? Right now, if we raised our fees today on a building permit, it's probably pennies for what we need to get out of them, but long-term, I'm assuming that that's the source of revenue that could help at least start funding this.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you, Councilman Gonzalez. And staff can, so like for instance, the housing element's on a 7-year cycle for us. And we certainly could look at matching up what we charge as a general plan maintenance fee, which again is a percentage of the building fees that we collect, to make sure we get towards, I guess, what I call cost recovery and anticipated state mandated updates to our elements or any other goals we identify related to the general plan.
And do we submit for the, is it SB 90 cost recovery, do we go after some of these fees?
For SB 90, yes.
And I know that there's other fees, probably in the other departments that are there any that state mandated costs that we can bill the state for?
There are numerous fees that, for permits within our department that we don't come close to cost recovery on.
But the state, if it's a state mandated cost and it's mandated unfunded, I thought that the state has a mechanism in the comptroller's office to go after. Maybe you can answer that question, Andy. Is there?
To the extent the state has funding available to pay them, yes. Okay, and in many years they have not had funding available to pay these fees. For the police-related programs, I'm seeing that they're getting a lot.
Okay.
They're recovering what they're mandated to do to some degree. But the only other costs, I don't know how many planning type costs there are. I know that there are, preparing minutes and things like that, agendas and Brown Act, stuff like that, that fees that you might be able to go after, but how much it is, I'm not sure.
Okay, I was just curious if there was a similar program for that.
All right, out of general fund, we have 8 more to go through. Any code enforcement? I have a quick question on code enforcement. The salary is $29,000, but the medical is $25,000. It's almost dollar for dollar. Is that real?
Yeah, I'd have to look at that description, but yeah.
Any other questions?
I'd like to back up just briefly and talk with the chief a little bit about the police department. Big part of our general fund, chief. Can you give me a rundown on the personnel there now, what you have for a staff?
So currently, there is 1 dispatch supervisor, 2 of the 4 full-time dispatchers are filled with full-time employees. And then we have some annuitants, as discussed earlier, that are helping us out in dispatch.
Couple of those, too?
Yes.
Okay. So that makes a department of 5 then?
Budgeted for 5.
Okay.
On the field side, we have 1 of the 2 sergeants is filled with a full-time employee. And then currently 6 of the 6 officers are filled with full-time employees.
So you're full, 6 of 6?
Correct. Although we anticipate an opening soon, and one of those officers is still just beginning his field training program, so he's not fulfilling a shift on his own for several weeks. And then on the administrative side, there's no more CSOs, no more community service officers, and I think Brittany and I are in the admin, budgeted in the admin. So those are both full.
Have there been any discussions with anybody about, dispatch always comes up. Is there any work being done on looking at contracting or finding a better deal or whatever?
There have been several discussions about it, and I have reached out and received a quote from Ukiah PD for what that would look like. There's also a need to upgrade our dispatch center, and so we're looking into whether there's grant funds available that could help do that.
Is that on top of this RIMS thing that they were talking about, or is it one and the same?
RIMS and RMS could be a small part of the needed upgrade for the dispatch center, a small portion of it.
Is there any logic to the comment that if you're dark for 4 hours a day, if you were added 10% darkness to that you would save 10%? You kind of get the drift of my question.
I think that by the good grace of the sheriff's office, the sheriff has agreed to cover us for those hours and only charge us for the time that they actually respond and handle calls for service. So that might be too much of an ask for him to agree to. And then if he was to contract and charge us for every hour that he covered, it might actually be more for a sheriff's deputy to cover that than it is for a police officer to cover that. We would have to analyze the numbers.
Yeah, I get it. And it's obviously dependent on what's going on that night or whatever.
Correct.
But it seems like that's one of the few options that you can see that we might have to stay operational. Okay. Well, so of your staff of 5, 2, and 6?
15, should be 15.
Are all of them working, or are they?
Well, we do have one on leave. We do have one on leave. And then again, one of the officers is in training. So, and there's technically 3 openings, depending on how you look at it.
So you're not recruiting for any of those openings?
Currently, I have no authorization to hire any additional staff.
Thanks.
All right, moving on. So let me say this, on general fund questions, are there any more general fund questions?
Mayor, if I could?
Yep.
So you got a question about the code enforcement?
Yep.
So I just looked that up. So there is a $10,000 error there.
Oh, in our favor?
Check to see, yes.
Oh, that's good, congratulations.
See if that issue would arrive anywhere else and it doesn't. So,
Well done.
okay, good catch.
Thank you. Any more general fund questions?
I don't know quite how to bring this one up, because I think
It's too late now.
kind of to Davy. Is there anything budgeted on a building on the corner of Commercial and Main in this budget?
Yeah, so
Talk about the Van Hotel.
the Van Hotel. yeah.
Okay,
So,
all right.
So the funding we have, we've broken that up into both code enforcement and building safety. It's on, sorry. And it's under other contracts. So it's just, we've reduced the amount we're planning on spending, but those other contract fees are for software and legal fees. And we'll move forward with, I think we're trying to schedule a closed session with council, with our council, to give you an update on that and the plan moving forward on how we're going to handle our current situation.
Thank you.
Okay, so if we're done with general fund questions, are there any questions for general fund revenue? I think they speak for themselves.
General fund revenue?
Yeah, you were just there. It followed the general fund, the special revenue funds to general fund.
Oh, special revenue for the general. Well, the one that popped out at me was a professional services contract, 65,400 for $120,000 this year.
What?
My page 31, it's Information Technology ISF Fund 110.
Cool.
1910 or 110?
It is Fund 11.
Contract.
Contract for professional IT services for the city.
10,000 a month, as opposed to software subscriptions and other contract for $10,000.
That's anything IT.
They think they're worth. I wish I felt qualified to question that.
Mr. Mayor, I think we're going to lose Mr. Heath here.
I know we're going to
reach the end of our discussion.
29 minutes. But if we have to continue this, we'll continue this. I don't want to rush a budget to say we didn't have time.
Exactly right.
All right, enterprise funds. Can we move on to enterprise funds?
Yeah.
All right. Who wants to go with the first question?
With the sewer enterprise fund?
Okay.
Yeah, let's start with the sewer enterprise fund, Fund 510410. Near the bottom of listed revenue, there's 5 X's there. What, is that not been assigned a number?
I think that's, I bet you that's the refund.
Oh, that's just, it means new account. Bless you, bless you, bless you.
That's true.
Yeah, the account hasn't been created yet, so.
That's the hopeful rebate,
number.
I suspect, on the solar system.
Right, yeah.
Oh, right there.
Let's see, I got another sewer question on, in the couple pages in, still the details, under 41-140, listed under sewer engineering. We had a previous budget of 2,000 and then we went up to 23,000. I was curious about whether there was something in.
Again, just a redistribution of wages and where they're going.
Okay, there wasn't anything specific for that? Okay, thank you.
Can we back up, Matthew, to the
Yes.
revenue side? I mean, the adopted budget of 25-26 showed revenue, the projected revenue of 3.4, and I was just wondering how we missed that so far off.
What's the question?
Well, the question is on its charges for service 44,000. The adopted budget for last year on the rates was to create income of $3,420,000.
Yeah, but I think that had something to do with, there was a component of other revenue sources that were then reduced in the aggregate, just where things were ending up. So when the budget was adopted, I didn't know where all the stuff would go. And then ultimately, at mid-year, when I adjusted those numbers, it was based on where numbers were actually going. So
Okay.
that's just it. I mean, the adopted budget last year was put together based on what we knew, and that was it. There wasn't a lot of sign-ups to it.
I notice on the Meadowbrook sewer utility charge, it's flat. Is there no COLA in that, Davey?
I don't know about that.
You know that's kind of caught under.
Does it go up at all ever, or is it just stay stagnant?
It's a flat, the same sewer rate for residential, it's just they're charged different. They're charged monthly.
Yeah, I believe we get this monthly, but it's the same sewer rate for every household out there. So basically, until they build a new house or have a new sewer hookup, we're going to get the exact same fee. So it should go up when our sewer rates go up. It'll go up.
Well, the sewer rates did go up
Yeah.
last year, albeit 3% instead of the 6 or 9 they asked for.
Yeah, so this technically should be I think it's 3.75 went up last year. It should be 3.75% higher than that.
Okay, so it was more about the context of the contract with them as whether it was a flat 120,000 a year forever.
No, it's not a flat. Yeah, as far as I know, it's per house.
It's per, yeah.
It's per house.
Roughly 100%.
It's on sewer enterprise funds, it's on the revenue. On the
Oh, I
revenue.
see it. Okay. That's right.
All right, any more sewer?
I got another sewer.
Go.
All right, so on the sewer, it's, there are multiple pages, so it's got to be 5 or 6 pages in. Under sewer maintenance, 4111. Maintenance supplies, 63100. We're pretty steady, about 33,000 there, and then our proposed budget is 100,000. That's like 3 times more than we normally have ever used in previous years. And I just assumed there was a good reason for it.
I wonder if that has a filter that he said has already been paid for.
No, that was in the water
I can
plant.
answer that. That was, should have been 100,000 last year, but it was not put into the budget.
Oh,
And to date, I can tell you, and it's for emergency, it's actually maintenance supplies and emergencies. Emergency repairs, we had one on Highway 20, it's cost us about $37,000. That would be absorbed in that maintenance fund for that. So it's to date, we have 52,000 spent out of that fund. So it's more or less a placeholder for that 100,000 in case we do incur an emergency. There's no other funds allocated somewhere else.
a contingency fund, got it, okay.
Yeah, it's a pretty round number. It seemed like a pretty,
Yeah. It should have been last year, I had it in the budget for 100, but it never made it.
Okay, I'm glad you're here, thank you. What else? Any more sewer? Well, what?
I have some questions, but it really have to do with not budget issues, so I'll do it later.
okay, sewer done.
Okay, let's go to water. Any questions for water?
Water, operating and other expenses. 4131, water distribution. Equipment and supplies. For water distribution, again, previous years penciled out about 12,000, 11,000, even at the mid-year, a couple months ago, we're looking at 11,000, now it's 50,000.
Another one of those that should have been 50,000 is our annual meter water replacement program.
Thank you.
Scott, could you give me a rundown on the personnel in both those departments?
Yeah,
Water and wastewater?
both, there's 6 operators in each one, 5 water and then a meter reader position. And
So
then-
in 5 operators in water?
Yes.
The slide said 8.55, 9.9.
Yeah, I believe that includes Scott, that number. So Scott's telling you how many operators we have. That one would be added Scott and, yeah, thank you. And a little bit of me.
And then you wanted the same, so sewer was 6 also?
Yes.
Okay, that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay. What other freshwater?
Water, let's see, it's a few pages in again, it's under 4133, water operations. This time it's 65400, and our budget previously last year was 5,000, now it's 50,000. I didn't know, it seemed like it maybe even a typo. They're all 5,000 straight across, unless we picked up some professional services for the water operations.
That is very true. It's our city contract engineer. So it wasn't dispersed last year throughout the departments.
So that's the contracted engineer that we had?
So it's 50,000 out of water, 50 out of sewer, and then 50 out of, I think the general fund somewhere, or 245 fund.
Yeah, a little 245, and then the operations to 4,000 general
Yeah,
fund.
It's split 3 ways, it was 150,000 for the year and a half, I believe.
Okay.
So it's just to cover if we use it for any sewer services or water services, then we can take out of that instead of having to do it out of one fund that we allocated.
Okay, it looks like the contract under water engineering went down by a similar amount. It went down 50,000 at that
Yeah,
amount.
it's basically to hopefully allocate that better rather than punch it all into one place where it's
I
not.
didn't appreciate all that. Thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate it. I understand now.
Bruce, any water?
All done.
Gary, water? We're going to the airport if there's no more water. Okay, we're at the airport.
Well, the fuel thing is the one that is the scratcher for me on the,
I get it.
so I couldn't see where we bought any fuel. I could see we're budgeting 12,000 in revenues, but I couldn't see where we bought any fuel.
I thought you guys said they just filled us up or something recently.
So Andy, where would I look for fuel purchase?
So this probably is wherein lies the issue with all of the costs being allocated to inventory as an asset. So that's been going on for years. Okay, so as a result of it going on for years, it has not been expensed in your general ledger. And there's no line item for that.
So we could have had money out, money in, but we never tracked that good enough, and so therefore it looked like we
You bought the fuel. You bought the fuel.
Yeah.
It's just sitting as an asset.
Yeah, that we've already expended out and used,
Correct.
and so.
And I asked countless times about an inventory for the fuel, and I don't know what the answer is.
So it's 100% credit card sales.
Well, now it is, but this is accumulated.
The sales are fine. Okay, it's what we're buying that's not. Okay, so when we're buying fuel, we're debiting the asset and crediting cash. We should be debiting the expense and then adjusting the asset with the expense from year to year based on what's in inventory.
Mr. Heath, I've asked you this before, and I apologize, I'm going to ask you again. Do you think that in your looking at our books, has there been anything criminal?
No, not at all. Not at all.
Okay, thanks. All right, airport, any more airport questions? Really and truly, we're almost done.
Yes, we are.
All right, Sherry, get ready. We're almost done.
I know that.
Okay.
I heard it.
All right, any more questions from the council? All right, I'm going to open back up to public comment, please. And you're not under 3 minutes, but we do have a hard stop
Can I
from,
just ask questions from here?
no, because they can't hear it on the video. Sorry.
Okay.
I think we do need.
My main question keeps centering around staffing. I see like HR has no cost expenditures for staffing. Planning has none. And I'm assuming those were moved into city admin, which went way up.
We have a consultant doing our human resources now.
It's in a contract.
Okay,
Contract.
okay, okay. So in one of the slides, the staffing in the general fund went down a bit over 10 FTE. And I'm at a loss to understand where those 10 FTE are to be found.
That's a good question. It went down 14, went 58 to 44.
No, that's for all of the,
Yeah.
but just the general fund I'm talking. For all of the funds, enterprise, yeah. But just the general fund went down 10 point something. Yeah, and like I said, I'm at a loss.
So Sherry, one of the things that Mr. Heath talked about is reallocating to an appropriate amount of percentages that people are getting paid out of. And in the past, we've had leaders that might have been, not might have been, they were taking money out of good funds like enterprise and saying, well, these general fund people are doing this and it's easier to pay. But I think that we're, as his words, right-sizing this to be much more transparent to the public to say, if we don't have a police officer who's doing 5% at the sewer plant, we're not going to take 5% of the sewer plant to pay for this police officer. Does that make sense?
I totally.
Did I explain that, Mr. Heath?
But here's the problem with that, is that what that would do would increase the general fund staffing. If you're not allocating to them, to those enterprise funds, you're putting them back in the general fund where they should have been paid.
Right.
It would increase the FTEs. But at the beginning, we see they drop. I would just love to see where did they come from?
Or where did they go, right?
Or where did they go? Thank you, that's a better way to put it.
We will put that together.
Okay, that would be really, I would love that. this is just a comment, health benefits. I heard over and over how much they've increased. I know in school districts, we used to cap the health benefits to employees.
The cafeteria type, take what you want.
Well, they got an X amount of dollars for their health benefits. If the benefits went up, it came out of the employee's pocket. So I don't know how it works with the city. If the health benefits go up, does the city incur that entire increase? What does the contract say? That might be a place to look in terms of setting up some kind of caps, because it feels like a runaway train.
Well, we were talking about that earlier, that they're going to do another open enrollment when they do a negotiated, because they have to negotiate with the bargaining units. And at that point, you enter that discussion by, instead of just saying we're going to cut them across the board, you basically say, hey, guess what? They don't have Pepsi anymore. They only have XYZ. And this is what we're going to, and that's when we can fire our volley and say, we might cap this or not this, and go from there. Until the menu's out there as to what to choose from,
Okay.
you can't really do that.
Okay.
Okay, then we have to make it really quick.
Last question.
Okay.
I heard Scott, who was my son's classmate here in Willits,
Okay.
say that there was a water cost split between water, sewer, and the general fund. Am I correct?
For the engineer.
Yes, for the,
Why is the general fund paying any of that?
it's printed on 245 fund.
Why? Oh,
So our engineer does do a lot of general fund work sometimes. So like transportation, for example, for like a road projects and other projects, that cost is a general fund cost, like our street maintenance. So when the engineer, we don't just pay her $150,000, it's as we use her. So we haven't even spent that much, we didn't spend all that this year, right? So instead of putting her all in water and wastewater, we've broken it up into the most common uses of her time.
And Davey, isn't it true that in the old days, if there was a water leak or a water issue, we dug it all up and, might have billed water, but we left a mess there and plugged it up, and now I think the approach is, if you're going to do a water project, you're going to combine it with, well, do we need to do sewer, since we're cutting up the road, and there's a certain part of that that's also street maintenance, that's where you get that apportionment of the engineer's time.
Exactly. So for example, we just did the small project, that Franklin storm drain repair, right? Well, that included a $20,000 cost to the water, right? We fixed a water line, extended the hydrant, right? So so the water department paid for that portion of the project, and we did have to have the engineer on that project because it's in the Caltrans encroachment, and we need them to certify the ADA, the parts of the Caltrans right-of-way we worked in, right? So that her time is included in the design for the water, for the road, and for the storm drain, right? So we just want to allocate that cost correctly for where that time's spent.
All right, and that makes sense. Okay, thank you very much. All right, any other public comment?
Thank you, Mayor, Council. Thanks for having this workshop this evening for the budget. Well, we're treating it in a good way. It is a public meeting, and we're treating it in a way that we can treat it as a workshop. We can have these questions, and I appreciate that. So thank you for that. I have 3 questions. The first one is sewer fund payback from the water fund from 24-25 budget. There was $629,152 that went from sewer into water. I'm just wondering, where's the payback on that, or if we could just find out like how that's gonna be handled. Second,
Moving on, is that a fair question? You'll be able to get that?
I believe that was.
So yeah, we did address that a while ago, and it's with our past finance director, so we will readdress that when Joseph gets some air, but it is an accounting function of...
you understand the question,
yes.
We have the answer.
And,
yeah.
All right, moving on.
I believe you, Davey, no worries. Just want to make sure. Okay, I'm hearing discussions on, potentially doing another rate study, and we're currently in the midst of that rate study timeframe that was already paid for, but then not followed by the council in 2025. I totally understand. Maybe we didn't know the numbers, but the study was done. The study was legit. It was defensible. We didn't follow it. So I just want to say, please consider, is it really the right time to ask the ratepayers to pay for another study that could potentially just be treated arbitrarily when it's time to consider rate increases again? Let's not do that. Finally, there's an operations and maintenance line item for Brook Trails that's budgeted at $415,000. $415,000 is the number that's derived from the first and second amendments to the settlement agreement relating to litigation concerning an agreement by and between the city and Brook Trails for disposal of wastewater from Brook Trails into the city's wastewater treatment and disposal facilities. I ask because this is very close to the amount in the draft second amendment to the settlement agreement that Brook Trails paid in good faith throughout fiscal year 25-26, even though there was no settlement agreement in place. If we're moving forward in tacit acceptance of that draft second amendment to the settlement agreement, the number in the budget should be escalated by 3.2% to $425,000, which is what Brook Trails budgeted this year for O&M. So I would say if you want to increase that and fill out that bottom line a little better, please do. Finally, even if that change isn't made, there's only one code enforcement $10,000 substantive change to the benefits. So please adopt the budget tonight. Thank you.
Any more public comment? Any more public comment? Public comment is closed. To the city manager, any concerns or comments right now?
No, sir.
Okay, to the council. We have several choices today. We can continue this on to another meeting. We can adopt the budget, which would be the first time in 3 years that we've adopted a budget before the July 1st state recommendation, mandate, whatever we call it. Or we can, well, we know that in 6 minutes, Mr. Heath has to leave.
You know what? For the purposes of that, I know that we need to revisit some things, but I know that we're going to get more detailed. I would be willing to make a motion to accept this budget and move forward. And then at a later date, if we have to cut or sharpen our pencils on it, then we can reopen it.
Okay, is there a second or more comment?
Well, I just want to make sure that your motion includes the fact of making the necessary transfers of the Measure K money.
Yes.
Okay, all right. In that case, I second that motion.
So we have a motion to approve the proposed budget and to transfer the Measure K money we talked about tonight. Any other discussion?
Yeah, I mean, I just think we got to first look at this budget. It is, even by the most generous of consideration, it is $651,000 out of balance with the Measure K money. It's obviously more than that without it. I don't think we have asked staff to bring back a budget with any reductions in it. I mean, they weren't instructed to do that with the development of this budget, at least not by the city council. They weren't instructed to do it. I appreciate everybody going over it tonight, but without it being the people that are in charge of, actually in charge of spending this money, without their, being asked to do their due diligence and find, I would just say 10%, and that we're not doing our financial duty here. We've been passing this little thing along for 18 months that I've been here, knowing that we're not addressing that shortfall, and I'd like to see what they could bring back. So I'm not going to support this budget for that reason. But
Larry,
I'm not saying it may not pass.
Larry, you want to weigh in? No. Okay, Gary, anything more?
I am not opposed to staff coming back to us with any more ideas, et cetera. I just, for the purpose of tonight, I'm willing to say it has some flaws and it's not perfect, but I do see some areas where there's some unknowns, and I'm assuming that some of those will be known here shortly, and other areas where we know that we're out of whack. So I'm not opposed to staff coming back to us. We got maybe at the first meeting in August or second meeting in August with, I don't know, that we could put it on the agenda to look at the budget again.
Well, we can look at it.
Yeah.
But once we adopt it, we adopt it.
Well, we can adopt it, but
We can still do changes.
So I want to weigh in by saying this to the staff and to the citizens of Willits. So just because it sounds like we will probably adopt the proposed budget tonight. And that doesn't mean that it's going to be a situation where we don't think about it until next March, when we have the proposed budget for 26, 27. We are in a tough time right now, and we have to make cuts. And whether the city employees come to us and say this, or whether we continue to go to the city employees and say we have to continue cutting, that's what's going to happen. The budget will be talked about at every city council meeting. And we have a motion in a second. I have a prediction it's going to pass. But I'm telling the city employees, don't just breathe out a sigh of relief and say we don't have to deal with this for another 9 months. This will be dealt with every month. We have a new finance director who has done an absolute superb job in the last 5 weeks, 6 weeks of jumping in and hanging on. We have some great resources that are helping him, showing the way. We're actually starting to use software the city paid for over 2 years ago that we've never really utilized it to its fullest potential, and we're doing that. We've reorganized the monies that were being in a shell game, moving monies around, and this is a very transparent budget. And I appreciate the patience of the city, but our work's not done yet. This is a very, very huge watermark here, but we're not over yet. So we have a motion and a second to the clerk.
Councilmember Burton?
No.
Gonzalez?
yes.
Stransky?
Yes.
Alaniz?
We cut $600,000 from last year's budget. I say yes.
Almond?
Yes. All right. The special meeting that we've had is over. I appreciate the staff's time. We're out of here at 9:29. Mr. Heath, thank you for your time. Meeting adjourned.
Thank you for the deadline.